Okay, so we will resume. I believe we're starting at tab 5, fire. Any pecuniary interest before we start? Good. Okay, CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Before we dive into the discussion today, just wanted to follow up on a couple of things from our meeting last Wednesday. So there's a couple of requests from council, one of them being some information on our town halls, as well as some financial information as it relates to our integrity commissioner. So I believe an email was sent from our director of finance to all members of the council earlier today, providing that information. In addition to that, I sent an email just recently to all members of the council regarding a request for some further information on the outdoor maintenance worker position. So that is now, should be in your inboxes as well. So I believe the only outstanding item from last session was, or last meeting was some information on our IT licenses, which is forthcoming. So that will be coming following this meeting. So with that, as the mayor mentioned, we'll start off with our fire and emergency services. So tab 5 are the budget binder. So on this slide here, again, just showing what the net impact to the municipality or to the taxpayer is for 2020. So year over year, there's actually a $92,000 decrease in our fire and emergency services. And the next slide provides a high level as to what is contributing to that decrease. So you may recall back in 2019, and actually 2018 maybe too, there was a request in 2019 for additional fire training dollars or hours, and obviously we've made a decision to not continue with some of those training hours, and hence there was a reduction of approximately $98,000 in doing so. This training was not mandatory, and if and when it does become mandatory, obviously we'll be back in front of you to have a further conversation, but at this stage, not mandatory, hence we're suggesting those dollars be removed. We are looking at an increase in fire call revenue, both from a county, on our county and township roads, which equates to approximately $34,000. We're looking at a reduction in vehicle repair costs of approximately $15,000, and this is directly attributable to the program change that council approved last year with regards to the mechanic. So we are seeing some benefits, additional benefits to that hire. The next item is just replacement of some fire equipment in the amount of $24,000. We are looking at increasing the annual asset life cycle contribution to reserve, so money that we set aside every year to assist with future replacement of assets. We're looking at increasing that by $15,000. And then also increasing contracted services as it directly relates to winter maintenance and the tower site rentals for our new radio system, which we'll have further conversation when we talk about our capital. So that equates to an increase of $16,000. So all of those items essentially equate to a reduction of approximately $92,000. There is no program changes being requested in our fire and emergency services area for 2020. And then this slide here just provides council with some major initiatives that are being proposed in 2020. And I guess at this stage, I'll turn things over to our deputy fire chief to comment on any of these, and then we can answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you. So major initiatives in 2020, begin to design and build the process for the new Station 2, just to get that ball rolling. Once we do get that property, we'd like to have that in place, ready to go. Continue renovation on Station 5. So as you know, the paramedic services did move out into their new facility on the west end of Elmville. So with that space, we're going to do some renovations on the upstairs and the main level of Station 5. Recruitment and retention is ongoing every year. We're actually doing interviews this weekend for 23 new people to join our team. So looking forward to that. And then replacement of pump 52, and that is supposed to say tanker 55, not pump 22. So pump 52 and tank 55, which is out of Station 5. We're looking at combining those two trucks into one truck. The one truck is a 2000. The other pumper is a 2001. they're at the 20-year life cycle that we're recommending just to upgrade them. We want to combine them two into one with the same water capacity, so that allows our FUS underwriters to continue with the insurance accreditation for the residents.
Good. Questions? Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, to the Deputy Fire Chief. The design build process for the companies that participated in that, could we go back and ask them to get into the swing of things again, or that same design, or there's a totally different design that you're gonna bring forward here to council?
I'll start with CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Ritchie. So from a procurement standpoint, we would have to go to the market, so we would definitely be able to approach those three, but in addition to that, we would have to open it up to the market in general. So just to make sure we're abiding by proper procurement protocol, but as it relates to scope, I believe the Deputy Chief might be able to speak better to that than me.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Ritchie. I believe we'll go with something similar to what came out in the past. I don't think we need anything that's large, extravagant. Just a facility to hold our firefighters in and plan for the future with the growth coming and everything.
Follow on?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen. I know when we were looking at it there the last time, obviously, with the big talk back then was to incorporate ambulance. Well, obviously, we don't have to do that now because they got their own station here. So obviously, I guess we'll want to look towards having room to order. Retention and training seems to be an ongoing, I think that's a fair statement to make, a very ongoing thing there with our volunteer firefighters to establish some kind of a training that we can, have the room there to do that. So I look forward to that. But there was, if memory serves me correctly, one or two of those companies, that's basically all they did was build fire halls. Like they had a real, and we were up to look at the one in Tate Township. Maybe Councillor Hanna was with us. We looked at it. It wasn't nothing splashy, but it was hands-on and worked very well. So I look forward to that coming. Thanks.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'll start with the Deputy Fire Chief, if I may. You talked about the two tankers being replaced. Are we replacing them because of the 20-year criteria, or is there maintenance problems? Are they, I guess, fit for service is what I'm looking for.
Deputy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to you to Councillor Hanna. They are at the 20-year mark. One is a tanker. One is a pumper tanker. They currently hold, one currently holds 3 firefighters, the other one holds 2. We are starting to get into more and more repairs with them. They are at the 20-year cycle, as well as finding parts is sometimes a challenge too because of the age of them. But that being said, looking at the 2 again, we're going to combine the water so that doesn't decrease, and we're going to look at actually making it a 5-person cab just to be more efficient in getting firefighters to the scene with more equipment versus bringing more trucks to the scene with putting people at risk on the road.
Follow on?
Thank you. I just want to make sure that we're not being pressured by the underwriter's recommendation that we change our fire equipment every 20 years, because as conversation we've had, as I explained to you, I checked with underwriters, I checked with insurance companies, and the bottom line I received was if we don't make those changes at 20 years, the only effect it has, it could raise residents' insurance rates. I inquired as to what that would be. I was told if we're a volunteer fire service, we're probably at the highest insurance rates anyway. So I just want to make sure we're not being pressured by the 20-year thing. And for the rest of the council who don't know this, when our population goes from 19,000 to 20,000, we now have to start changing our fire equipment every 15 years. So I guess my next question will be to our CAO or Director of Finance. I don't know how much we have on our fire reserves, but maybe, I see we're only increasing by 15,000. I'm just suggesting when we get down to the last day of budget, if we have extra money, keeping in mind we're only 1,000 people away from having to change all our equipment that's 15 years old, and maybe the fire chief can tell us if we got a lot of equipment that's knocking on that door, and if we should be putting more money into our fire reserves to be prepared for that.
Start with CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So based on the statement of reserve and reserve funds that was provided at the last meeting, at the end of 2018, we're just shy of $1.5 million in the fire capital reserve.
And any comments with respect to the reduction from 20 to 15? That's solid, firm, no way to negotiate or deal with that? Just as soon as you're over that number, it gets reduced by 25%?
I'd actually have to go back and have a look, just to see the area. I know in the past, I've heard, I haven't confirmed it yet, but you could maybe take a truck, let's say, out of Midhurst and move it up to our more northern station and get the last 5 years out of it, just because of the population difference. But again, I'd have to confirm all that and get back to you.
It'd be worth pursuing just for our
Yeah.
edification. Thank you. CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to clarify too, so the contribution, the actual contribution to reserve in 2020 or proposed is $150,000 into the actual reserve. So going from 135 to 150, that's the $15,000 increase.
Okay. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Deputy Chief French. It's more a question regarding deployment. 2 trucks, is that going to affect or reduce our potential by going from 2 trucks to 1 truck? I'm just envisioning, depending if there was an additional call, so I just want to know if you're envisioning any impact with respect to that, or do you feel that we'll be able to provide the same level that we're currently providing?
Deputy Chief?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councilor Cabral. I think it'll actually be better than what we are now. We've been proactive as we've been buying trucks in the past with buying combination pumper tankers, multiple use trucks. This new one that would be coming would be another multiple use truck. So that way when there is firefighters on standby or available, we can deploy that truck to another call versus right now we have just a straight tanker that would go to a car accident or even go to a fire in Elmville, and basically it's just to get the people there and it'll sit on the road because we have the hydrants there. So we would rather get a multiple use truck that we can use efficiently.
Follow on?
Thank you. I just wasn't certain whether 2 trucks could attend 2 different locations, but it sounds like one's just really being used for transportation then.
Yes, so through you, Your Worship, again, to Councilor Cabral. So in the Elmville station where this would be going, there's currently 4 fire trucks with a utility vehicle. So once we combine those 2, we'll have 3 full multi-use trucks and 1 utility vehicle.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. I just can't leave this without knowing if we got our trucks that are reaching that 15-year replacement recommendation by the underwriters.
Deputy Chief?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Hanna, yes, we do have one coming up to 15 years in the next few years. Again, being proactive in that, we'll have a look and see if we can utilize that in another station for the remaining of its life of that 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if we move on to tab 6 of the budget binder, which is our Building Services Department. So our Building Services Department, there is no actual net tax impact on the residents. Essentially, it's a 100% user pay service, so funded by user fees. So some of the budget pressures, obviously, as I mentioned, there is no net tax impact. However, the 2020 budget does propose to draw approximately $367,000 from the building reserve to ensure that this program is fully funded in 2020. And at the end of 2018, our building reserve was equated to approximately $1.3 million. There are no requested program changes in our Building Services Department. And with that, I will pass things over to our CBO to discuss major initiatives in building services for 2020.
Director?
Thank you. Our major initiatives this year are continuing on the replacement of our building software. We started the process in October of this year. It's going to take some time, so we are hoping that that is all going to be complete. We actually know it's going to be completed in 2020. With that, it's going to bring a lot more enhancements for online opportunities for building services. Along with that, we are dealing with the transition of the Ontario Building Code from going from a Ontario-based code to utilizing more of the National Building Code of Canada. In January 2020, we start that process where it's going to start blending to the National Building Code of Canada, and a lot more enhancements come on board in 2022. What that means is there's going to be a need there for training for building officials, and also the rollout out to our contractors out there on the field. Along with that, and as we were just discussing at our last council meeting, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing is looking at transforming and modernizing the Ontario Building Code services that's providing. We're not sure what that is really entail, but we'll see where that kind of goes. We also have our maintenance cycle for our building officials, which is starting again, and that means that we have to maintain a certain number of points for us to maintain our qualifications. So that just starts in January of this year. And also one other one to note is just our septic reinspection program. We are not going to be doing it next year, but we're going to have to start communicating out with the public because we are going to need to do our second phase of inspections in source water protection areas. So maybe only about 100 and so properties, maybe in 2021 at this point. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. You just mentioned there, so we're not doing the septic reinspection. We're done with Orr Lake then?
Director?
Mayor Allen, over to Councillor Ritchie. That is correct. We are done with Orr Lake. We've undertaken the inspections of all those properties. All we have left to do is second phase of source water protection areas, but for Orr Lake, it was only one round, and that is it.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. You've got here building permits issued, 219, 186, 2020 proposed 500. Like, that's an awful jump. Is there, what is it you plan that's coming on stream here? Is that Stone Manor? Is it some other some new development that's coming down the pipe?
Director?
That's page 3.
Mayor Allen, over to Councillor Ritchie. So in order to try to figure out how many permits we expect, usually it's a situation where every year our Director of Planning Services and myself kind of sit in a room and we see what's coming online. Next year, we don't really have any new developments coming online, major developments, I should say. So we are going to be utilizing or basing on most of what we already have on go. We anticipate around 500 permits next year. That is a rough guess. We know of at least one major project in Elmville consisting of 24 apartment units. So we're going to have that. We know we anticipate that's coming. We thought maybe we even have it this year, but that we know is there. We know in Elmville we do have some development going on in there, and that seems to be going okay, pretty well in sales. Stone Manor has picked up in terms of sales as well, but we also have everything else that we're dealing with from previous years. So the houses are built now they're building the sheds, they're building the pools, they're putting in the decks, and we're still seeing that as a fairly high number. Last year, for instance, right now we're sitting at around 280 smaller projects, and we anticipate that's probably going to be pretty level at that.
So if I may, just before you go,
Sure, go ahead.
it says year-to-date to June, 186. A more updated figure comparable to 218's 507 and the budget 500 would be?
Mayor Allen, today we're probably looking at around, today's number, we're about 386 permits is where we are. 500 was our estimate in terms of permits for next year. But right now, we are looking at around 380 permits we've issued this year.
And given this year's actual, you still think 500 is realistic?
The only thing that it's the Elmville apartment complex.
Yep.
And just because we know that's 24 permits, we're going in there right now. And the sales in Stone Manor, they have been selling a little bit more with their new rollout of new models which are going there. So we actually have started to see a little bit more development going on in Stone Manor. Again, I think in the past couple of weeks, we were seeing something like 13 or 15 permits just issued in Stone Manor alone.
Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, twofold here. Gallo, I believe that there's more coming on there, and also in the far corner there, Bernie Still up by the Catholic school. Where are we with that? Can you kind of highlight that? Is that coming
Director?
on?
I'll speak with the Gallo. Yeah, Gallo right now, I think, has around 42, actually 37 in, because we just had to check this the other day. And they have a total of, I believe it's around 70 when you look at phase 2 going in. And I believe there's another builder in there as well now. In terms of the Bernie Still subdivision, that is, we don't know. I can tell you what we have heard. It might go out next year. However, considering you start shoveling the ground, start putting the sewers in, we're probably not going to see that until late next year if everything goes as they're hoping. However, if I had to guess on it, I would play the safe card and say it's not coming on maybe until 2021.
Alderman?
Just getting back to Gallo, Frank Moore Homes are in there. I was speaking to him there one morning. And that brings me comfort because they've built a lot, they do a good job. And he says, I could build this whole subdivision, that's not a problem. So they're in there. Nice to see them, thanks.
Any other points then? Okay, moving on to Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tab 7 of the budget binders is Public Works. So in Public Works, the net tax impact from 2020 to 2019 was $336,000, or 2.54% increase. And this slide here provides the high-level justifications, if you will, or budget pressures that are happening within Public Works. So the first one being an increase in contracted services related to hot mix asphalt patching, sealing, and dust suppressants. The anticipated cost for the works in Swaley Drain, approximately $70,000. Additional long-term debt of just under $40,000. Cost of living adjustment and merit increases or step increases of just under $40,000. Annualized costs for new staff that were approved in 2019, so the asset management coordinator and the mechanic, mechanic of approximately $38,000. The reduction in user fee revenue as it relates to cut and fill and winter maintenance for unassumed subdivisions. We're expecting a reduction of approximately $30,000 there. And then the increase to the capital infrastructure reserve over 2019 levels. So this is the 1% contribution that we make to the capital infrastructure reserve. We're looking at an increase of approximately just over $11,000. So that those all items add up to the $336,000. We are in Public Works looking for a program change in 2020 with regards to a Public Works assistant. I wasn't necessarily going to go into the program changes right now. We have another section of the budget presentation that we can discuss in greater detail, but essentially that's what we're looking at right now. And then again, I will turn things over to our Director of Public Works to discuss major initiatives in 2020.
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So in 2020, Public Works will continue our ongoing road resurfacing and life cycle budgeting, which is basically what leads to the capital budget that you see before you in a couple of days. Tied with that, to sort of jump ahead, would be the update with the asset management inventories and implementing the new software. Those two will be tied together in 2020. Instead of relying on an outdated road needs study, we will have the updated road needs study done along with getting all these inventories into a proper asset management system so that we will have more black and white in terms of our budget. We'll finalize the engineering updates, and that ties directly to the Midhurst subdivision designs. As you know, we have the preliminary go-ahead from the ministry, so we will proceed with ensuring that our engineering standards meet with those subdivision designs that will be coming from the Midhurst area. We'll continue with the stormwater management pond inspections and compliance. So each year, the ministry chooses to inspect one of our 29 ponds, so we make sure that all are inspected before they're ready to come out and take a look. We will finish up on the review and update of the traffic calming policy. That is just about complete now, and we will get it to council for information before Christmas. So you have time to review it and ask questions. We'll look at finalizing the policy in February of 2020. And I've gone over the next two. The last one will be, I guess it was 2016. We went out and had a capital plan created for the water and wastewater. It was a 20-year capital plan. The final 10 years of those were kind of rolled up, so we're looking at updating that in 2020 to get more comprehensive situation of what our capital water and wastewater infrastructure looks like.
Okay, comments? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you very much, Mayor Allen, through to Director Coleman. The portion that deals with the contracted services, with respect to the dust suppressants, having them applied on my road fairly regularly over the years, I always noticed it was township trucks that did it. Did our township trucks engage in any dust suppression services this year? Was it all done by contract?
Director?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Cabral. That is a contracted service. The reason we're expecting an increase in 2020 is we went out for a contract. I think we did 4 years, or 3 or 4 years in 2016, so that we had a guaranteed price for 4 years. In 2020, that contract has expired, so we do expect an increase.
Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie.
The Swaley drain, I'd like to just speak about that. I'm assuming that that's going to be coming back to council in the new year in 2020. That amount that you're asking, $70,000, can you just explain to council what all that entails? Just how are we going to mitigate and fix this problem?
Director?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Ritchie. So, as you're aware, we've been dealing with the Swaley drain for probably about 3 years now. The most recent update was in the spring of last year. The NVCA requested a year-long environmental study to determine what species at risk are in that area. We are waiting for the report on that. Mr. Smart hired a environmental, I guess, sub-consultant to complete that. He is still waiting for their report. So Mr. Smart has estimated that the township portion would be about $70,000. That will involve basically cleaning out the end of the Swaley drain and also cleaning out the creek that carries the outlet from the Swaley drain to the Willow Creek.
Follow on?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Who's paying for the engineering costs on this? This for Mr. Smart and his crew.
Director?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Councillor Ritchie. Currently, the township is carrying those costs, and then once all of the work is complete, it gets apportioned out to the affected landowners and the landowners that benefit from the work. And that will include the contracted services as well as Mr. Smart's engineering time. So that would, that $70,000 would be the estimated portion of the township where we own land. So our properties that we own or right-of-ways, roads that we own.
But what about the farmers? And like where I'm coming from with this, Mayor Allen, and this is a concern to me. And I spoke to a person with the MVCA today, Chris Hibbert, and I know him well. They have engineers on staff. And this boils down to our memorandum of understanding that it wasn't put in there. And we can thank our former CO for that, but I won't get into that. But, you know, there's $80,000 to $100,000 on this setting aside for this engineering cost, is it not, Director? The cost of the engineering study?
Director?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I believe it was estimated to be about $80,000, yes.
Mayor Allen, I know you sit on the board for the NVCA, so, and I know, I don't want to put you in a position, but I'm having a problem. I feel that the township, this is our responsibility. We pay the this is where I'm coming from. We pay the NVCA $250,000 a year to oversee everything. And I don't know why they couldn't have done that as part of the cost that we pay them. It's a regulated area, it dumps into the Menacing Swamp. Nobody knows the Menacing Swamp better than them. When, on my first term, I watched a presentation put on by their fish biologist, great guy. He talked about the big lake sturgeon. From the mouth of the Nottawasaga River to Nicholson Dam in Alliston, I know I'm repeating myself with some of the councillors, but bear with me. That's the premier spawning bed for the big lake sturgeon, for all of the Great Lakes. It's so important the state of Michigan even funds that money. Now, if you think that was so important and so delicate, why wouldn't they be doing that study instead of us hiring an engineer? That's the problem that I have. And we're going to turn around and apportion that to the farmers. And I don't think that's right. And I'll be damned if I'm going to sit here and be quiet about it.
In your discussion today with Mr. Hibbert, did you bring that point up?
Yes, I did. And he says, well, we're busy with this. And you know what? He just stick-handled the issue. And I didn't like the answer that I got, Mayor Allen. And this is going to come up in our memory. This is where the sunset clause had come in. So where do we go from here when this study comes in? I ask everybody to read it really closely, like what the hell's in there that we needed that they couldn't have done? That they could have done that, and we're paying them to do that. Instead, we're going to get an outside engineer, and then we're going to apportion it to the farmers. And the farmers are going to be upset about this. This falls at our feet. This is bad governance. We should be doing this and handing the MVCA the bill, and if they don't like it, we'll take it off your bill. That's what we should be doing. And I'll leave it at that, Mayor Allen.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you, I guess my first point on the Swaley Drain would be that I believe it was sections 75 and 76 of the Drainage Act, which mandated that this council hire an outside engineer outside our purview. We wanted to use in-house and we wanted to use the NVCA, but the Drainage Act specifically dictated, and to our understanding at that time was that Ken Smart and Associates was the best. So that's who we had hired at the time. My concern with the allotment of 70,000, just for my own clarification, understanding the assessment schedule that moved forward last year, the proportion of the municipality's ownership as assessed or affected or benefiting property increased by 70%. Is that the 70,000, or is the 70,000 that's being added used for the outlet on the Muskrat Creek?
Director?
Thanks, Mayor Allen. Through you to Deputy Mayor Coghlan. I think I'll have to get back to you on that. I know I had an email, but I can't find it this quickly. Oh, hang tight. I take that back.
Did you have a follow-on?
And thank you, and through you to Director Coleman or I guess Council. My concern is that I do agree with Councillor Ritchie in that the assessment schedule that will be brought forward by Ken Smart and Associates, regardless of the proportion that the Drainage Act dictates this municipality is responsible for, or therefore the proprietor landowner, which is the NVCA, I do believe that we have documentation dating back a decade through technician Buchanan that the NVCA has been aware of the work that's needed to be done, the regular maintenance that needed to be done, and we have requested in our 5 years, if the NVCA wasn't willing to do the work, just give us a permit and let us do what needs to be done. I do agree with Councillor Ritchie that the benefiting or affected landowners have brought it to our attention. We have been working with them diligently, and I just want to ensure that we are budgeting accordingly, because I do feel that this council is going to have to vote in the next year on the portion of the assessment that we will be responsible for. And I don't know if there's a reserve that needs to be created or through the Drainage Act. I haven't seen the schedule from Ken Smart yet, but understanding the last time we doubled from about 60,000 up to 100 and something thousand as our portion, we need to make sure that that money's there so that when we do go back to the benefiting landowners, we do have the ability at the table to alter the schedule put forward. Just making sure that we do have enough money set aside this year. It has been 3 years in the works, and we're really hoping that in the spring we can get in there so that these tile drains start actually draining. I don't know what or how much we're supposed to be putting aside, and I do apologize when I read this report or read the budget.
CAO Schmidt, and then we'll bounce back to Director Coleman on that.
Thank you.
Contingency and the numbers and the adequacy of what might be the outcome in the next year with respect to this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Deputy Mayor Coghlan, members of council. So with respect to the reserve, we do have a reserve. It's approximately just over $43,000 in the reserve that could be used to minimize this impact. And subject to the director's comments, it's my understanding that the $70,000 is the township's portion based on the assessment schedule. But I stand to be corrected on that.
Director?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. No, that's correct. So that 70,000 would be what's budgeted to pay for our portion of the costs. So subject, if the desire is to change our portion of the costs, then I would suggest that we increase that budget so that it's, you can use it appropriately, I guess.
Follow on?
Thank you. No, I guess notwithstanding that I wasn't prepared to put forward a motion tonight, nor do I have the assessment schedule from Ken Smart. But I do believe that, I don't know who has failed our residents, understanding that there are landowners, and that is an internationally significant wetland, and we have gone back and forth to the NVCA saying, you've allowed this to fail. And as everybody's aware, my opinion is that they failed us, that this work should have been done. There should have been a regular maintenance done to prevent something as such from happening. This stems back to working with Buchanan and actually being able to watch on the Simcoe County map, the Muskrat Creek the outlet just disappears. So we knew this was happening, and we didn't, either we didn't by us or us with our CAs working with our conservation authorities, it didn't happen. So when the assessment schedule does come out, understand that we only have $43,000 set aside and that our minimum assessment is going to be 70. I do think that we need to adjust the budget allocation so that those funds are set aside. And in my opinion, I will be bringing forward something, and I don't have any numbers on hand, but I do believe that we are more responsible than the affected or benefiting residents. Understand that this watershed goes way out behind Georgian College, behind the hospital, and all the way back through. So there's a lot of work to be done on assessing it, which I'm assuming is underway or close to being completed. So this will be at our table shortly, hopefully. It's been a long time in the waiting. But if we only have 43 in reserve, I think there needs to be more set aside. I don't know, maybe sit down with finance at a different time to figure out a number or a resolution to bring to this table, but I think that we need to prepare for this expenditure as it is our responsibility.
CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify, the $70,000 is included in the 2020 base budget. So anything in addition to that $70,000 would be an exposure to the township, which we could utilize the $43,000 out of the reserve. So essentially, we have $113,000 if council approves the 2020 budget as is. We could have up to $113,000 available to us.
But we don't have any sense of a quantum of
Not at this stage.
what we're talking about. Yep. I'll go to Councillor Ritchie and then come back.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just want to, Deputy Mayor Coghlan has hit it right on the nail. She's right. I think You've got 70,000, that should be increased to 170,000, because if you got 70 for our portion, and it's another 80 or 100 to, for the engineer's report, you know what, I think you should, we should earmark that. Either that or just round it off at 200. And I could table a motion right now on that as well, or we can wait, or you can earmark it, whatever's happy for you. I got another question there as well too, but let's deal with this.
CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to confirm with our Director of Public Works, the engineering report is included in the gross expenditure number for 2020, right? Yeah, so the $70,000 is includes the engineering report, our portion of the engineering report, so.
Follow on?
That's our portion, but what about the portion that the farmers are gonna get stuck with? That's the portion, that 80 or 100, that's where, let's just take 100 plus 70 is 170,000 and earmark it for that, and we'll be safe. And then, if we don't use it, or whatever way we apportion it, I think this is where we should be standing to the plate and picking it up, because we failed to make them do it, and not make the farmers pick this up. And that's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay. Follow on, Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you. And last point on the Swaley drain. So the earmark, the 70,000 plus the 43 in the reserve, that could cover our assessment schedule based on what council decides. The work that needs to be done in order to alleviate the drainage issues of the Swaley drain, the Muskrat Creek, going into the Nottawasaga Valley, where is that money coming from? How much money needs to be set aside in order to do the actual work?
CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Coughlin, again, not knowing what that report's gonna come back with from Ken Smart, I can't answer that question. I don't know what those costs would be.
What's the updated time frame estimate for that report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Unfortunately, I don't know. Ken Smart is waiting for the environmental sub-consultant to provide his report. He's been saying that it's almost ready for several months now, and Mr. Smart is just as frustrated with the time delay as we are.
Okay. So where potentially would these extra funds come from? CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, so not having any other sources of funding available to us, it essentially would be property taxes. And/or we could look at our tax rate stabilization reserve and/or draw from another reserve, borrow from another reserve if need be.
The tax rate stabilization reserve sits at?
Approximately just over $200,000.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. The gas tax refund and all that stuff we got, could we use that if we had to, or have we spent that already?
CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hanna. So the additional gas tax dollars have been fully expended as of now.
Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, I'd like to table a motion here for this, to deal with this money. Unless you think we should wait, we'll just table it right now and get on with it.
Sounds like an appropriate time.
Okay, you want me to go ahead?
Please?
That this council increase the amount to $170,000 in the 2020 budget for the Swaley Drain project and to be assessed accordingly.
So and just to understand, increase by 100,000 to 170,000?
That's right.
Would you have a seconder on that?
Anybody help me with this? Councillor Cabral, I'm
Councillor
sorry,
Cabral?
Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, and it's procedural through you, Marilyn, to Clerk is it Chaperone still? Okay, I wasn't sure if it was Ainsworth yet. So to Clerk Chaperone, through this proceeding, there's no notices of motion, so are we able to ask questions about the motion now, or does it come forward later as a motion, or when are we able to ask questions about it?
Clerk Chaperone?
Thank you. As there is no motion on the table, council can propose a motion. Generally, what a notice of motion is used for is when you want to bring forward something that's not on the agenda, but because we're discussing budget, it's broad in nature, so members of council may propose motions debate it and dispose of it appropriately as long as there are no other motions on the table.
Deputy Mayor was asking about questions with respect to it though, so.
And thank you, that does answer. So the question that I do have is, while I want to support Councillor Ritchie in his $100,000 ask, I'm curious if we could refer this to staff, understanding we do have a little bit of time between now and when the budget's being finalized. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to reach out to Mr. Smart, work with Director Buchanan, Technician Buchanan, about this to get a better sense of what that money, I don't want to tax people for money that we don't necessarily need. So just to get a better idea through Director Coleman as to what a more appropriate number would be, although Director Coleman may have to use a crystal ball as to seeing what percentage this council would like to assume. We also need to communicate with the NVCA. They are the primary landholder in this assessment schedule. In my opinion, they are the ones who are responsible for the outcome that we're experiencing right now. And the works that need to be done, 3 years ago, we were told this was going to take floating cranes and work that was far exceeding the purview of this municipality's ability to absorb. So if that work is still being suggested or being required in order to alleviate the stress on the Swaley drain, this is something that we need to take to the province and to the feds, because we will never be able to absorb the millions of dollars that are going to be required to alleviate this from our residents. So the assessment schedule and our portion of the assessment schedule is one thing, but the work that needs to be done is still out there. And while I agree with Councillor Ritchie that we need to do more, I don't want to just throw a number at it, and I don't want to tax people if it's not what we need to do. I think that this is a very significant issue in our budget today and also moving forward. So if we could refer it to staff, to have it come back at another budget session to give all of council an understanding, and maybe even give us time to dive into this Swaley drain issue, to better understand what number we're going to have to throw at it. But I do agree with Councillor Ritchie that the 70,000 that we're putting aside, in my opinion, is not enough.
So Councillor Ritchie, would you consider adjusting the motion to take that into account, basically refer it to get more information to be able to subsequently?
I'll handle that. I think we need to deal with this, Mayor Allen. It's not good. This is bad.
Yes.
And I agree. We need to bring this back. We need to go and break open our piggy banks here. We can't let these guys get washed down the river. This is bad governance. But having said that, I do have a notice of motion that I want to talk about, but I can, while we're talking about it, I'll bring it up Wednesday night, notice of motion about municipal drains in our township, because we have a problem there. But we can deal with that Wednesday night. I think we got a lot to do here tonight without dealing with that, but I'm just notifying you.
Pardon me? So, Councillor Ritchie, you're in agreement to refer this?
Yes, I'll let it, more information, I think everybody, never go wrong with more information, I'll accept.
Okay, the motion that council increase the Swaley Drain project amount to $170,000 in the 2020 budget to be assessed accordingly, was adjusted to the motion before council be referred to staff to provide further information. That's okay with this mover and seconder? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Director Coleman, with respect to ditching, what is, I understand that we have that piece of equipment that we talked about last year and it's coming this year. We'll talk about that in capital, but what's provided for in the budget for catching up with the ditching that's required in the township, please?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So the majority of our ditching projects, well, actually all of our ditching projects are done in-house. So it would be discovered with the wages and equipment costs.
But there's provision there to throw extra time and resources to do a catch-up such that we would be caught up by the end of 2020 season?
I'm not sure if it's feasible to catch up, but it's certainly with the new excavator and then the 2020 proposed brushing machine, those would definitely be a focus for 2020.
Other, Councillor Ritchie?
Mary Ellen, you stumbled onto a good thing there. I'd like to ask the director, while we're talking about the Swaley Drain, is
Councillor,
that,
I didn't stumble.
my fault. You had to catch me on that, didn't you, eh? And I'll talk to you later about that. Anyways, is there any work that now that we have a new machine, we've got it, set up for ditching, is there any work that we can do in that Swaley Drain to do that, and do that in-house? That's one question.
Councillor? Director Coleman, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Councillor Ritchie. I think there would be possibly some opportunity. I think that we would have to review that with Ken Smart to see what actually the final proposal is, and then go from there. But there probably would be some opportunity for us to get in there.
Follow on.
Yes, and something while we're talking about ditching, okay, we ditched. Is there, you could bring back to council and show us where you've done the ditching to say, okay, we've done 5 kilometers, we've done 10 kilometers. Just show us in the township where you've done that. That'd be nice. I think all of council would like to see that anyways. Thank you.
Okay, other points, discussion, Councillor Cabral.
Actually, thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm just curious to know, I think the benchmark was 10 kilometers of ditching per year. I'm just curious whether or not we met that benchmark for 2019.
Director?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Councillor Cabral. We were on track to meet that. I'd have to check with staff to see what's actually been finished before it started to snow.
Okay, we'll follow up on that. Okay, moving on to Recreation Parks and Facilities.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, as we discussed at our last budget meeting, we've made a slight change to the title of this department, being Recreation Parks and Facilities as opposed to Recreation Parks and Properties. So we're talking about tab 8 in your budget binders. So year-over-year differential is just under a $250,000 increase, or 1.89%. And this slide here provides some of the major budget pressures or drivers in 2020. So as we talked at the last budget meeting, there's the EDHS staffing, the annualized cost for the new staffing, so that's approximately $99,000. The contractual services, so this is outside of or in addition to the EDHS staffing, is $49,000. There's some facility and community hall minor capital improvements that are being requested with an investment of $47,000. The increase in transfer to capital, so the amount of money that comes out of our operating budget to support capital for recreation parks and facilities has increased by $32,500 in 2020. We talked about a facility assessment study, so the net impact in 2020 is a $25,000 investment. The cost of living adjustment in this area is approximately $19,874. And then the annualized cost for the new staff approved in 2019 is actually a reduction of $23,000, and on that, so just so everybody's understanding what the reduction is. So you may recall that in 2020, there was a facility monitor that was converted to a permanent full-time position, recreation facility attendant. So there's that bump up, if you will, that was required. And then the contract position for the outdoor maintenance position that was approved only for the 1 year. Obviously, we're taking that out of the 2020 budget and requesting that through a program change in 2020. So hence that's what the $23,000 reduction is. Excuse me. So we are requesting a couple of program changes in the Recreation Parks and Facilities Department in 2020. The first one being the conversion of that contract position that was approved in 2019 to a permanent full-time position in 2020. So that comes at an investment of just under $74,000. And then we're asking for an additional, so a new permanent full-time position. You may recall that we did ask for 2 in 2019. So this is the additional one that being sought in 2020. Again, the costs in 2020 approximately equate to approximately $49,000, so that is not a 1 year annualized cost. And then we're looking at converting 2 summer student positions and replacing those 2 summer student positions with 2 park maintenance casual attendants. That equates to a net impact of approximately $40,000. So again, didn't want to get into the specifics right now, just wanted to give a highlight as to what we're requesting, but we will talk about those in greater detail when we get into the program change section of the presentation. So major initiatives for 2020, I will turn to our Manager of Parks and Facilities to address council on the major initiatives for 2020.
Manager Ryan.
Okay, so major initiatives in 2020 are programming and permitting of the shared use space at EDHS. So currently we're utilizing Tuesday nights for pickleball. Program coordinator is working daily to initiate more programs and reach out to other user groups. So that's well in the works right now. Perform additional property maintenance requirements with the Stone Manor Woods and Snow Valley Lowlands development, such as the trails, parks, stormwater management ponds, and wastewater treatment plant. So there's the Stone Manor Woods Park and Cameron Estates Park that we're taking on in 2020, which will include grass maintenance, garbage maintenance, playgrounds, and there's a new sports pad over at Stone Manor Woods as well, and trail systems that go through that park. We're trying to establish north and south work depots to reduce the overall drive time and increase productivity. So currently all our park staff go out of Yard 3, and we're looking at hopefully transitioning half of those staff to Yard 1. Again, just to reduce the drive time, because it takes quite some time to go from one end of the township to the other. Obviously twice daily. We'll be coordinating with the County of Simcoe to address the trail gaps in Springwater. So it's been an ongoing initiative to improve the trail systems and just link all the trail systems throughout the county. And obviously the preparation of the 2 new ball diamonds at Tree Nursery that are well underway. We're hoping to complete and prepare the infields and outfields. So there's some compaction and leveling that has to be completed in the spring because we got some snow earlier on. And then obviously the sod establishment. So the sod went down, everything looks good. So just kind of a final roll and hopefully get some knitting in of that sod in the early spring, and hoping to reach out to user groups over the winter months to start renting out that space.
Thank you. Questions, discussion? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Actually, I don't know. Manager Anderson, that's what I was looking for. You just mentioned there the trail gaps, and I'm just curious if you might be able to, I know that portion up by the 10th that cuts across there, there's been some county, I guess, looking at it. I've seen some things in the newspaper. Do you know exactly what might be going on there, what the process is, and whether we're involved in that? And is there a cost for us too there, I guess?
Manager Anderson?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral. I've been in a couple conversations this past week with Nick from Building and getting him to update me on that situation. And basically, it's a legal dispute between the homeowner, because they have a right-of-way to that trail system, and the Snow Voyager Club. So kind of, we're in a situation of a standstill. I don't know where we're going with this. I'm in the works right now with it. So I can't speak too much to that.
Follow on?
Follow-up, I guess I'd also like to know, I think there's an issue where the snowmobiles were traveling last year, and I think they're gonna be, I noticed some new signs that are gonna be directed out to Highway, or County Road 27 to continue northbound. Is that correct then, for the winter season?
Manager?
Yes, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Cabral. Again, this is kind of new to my plate, and so I've been trying to dig my heels in here to this to get some more information. But it is my understanding that the trail is being rerouted at this point, in hopes that in the future we don't necessarily have to do that.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Could we just back up to the page before, please, Director? Or, sorry, CEO, sorry. One more, please. So what improvements then are we thinking to make to the community halls, particularly? And would we not hold off on that until we had the assessment study completed? Or are you planning to go ahead with the improvements regardless?
CEO?
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just actually trying to find that information. I don't have it readily available to me. I think it's a number of minor improvements for a number of our community halls, but just got to pull up the information here. I'm not sure if our manager speak to some of them.
So through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Moore. I think, if my memory serves me correct, sorry I can't dig it up, but Minnesing Community Center, we're looking at basically refinishing the wood floors because that's the cheapest option at this point. We want to preserve the floors so that they don't deteriorate anymore. We do currently have some foundation issues with that building that are unknown. We have leaks going into the basement, and it's something kind of out of my realm. I have to get a contractor in to kind of help me diagnose what the issue is and then move forward with a plan on that. I'll have to refer to my notes to kind of go over the other initiatives.
Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through to you, Manager Anderson, is it worth the floor menacing? Is there enough room for that floor to be refinished one more time? We spent a lot of money refinishing it.
Manager Anderson?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Ma Chapman. So I did have discussions with a couple different companies last year in regards to refinishing of that floor. There is enough room for that floor to be refinished, and I think at this point it's the most economical route to take, just kind of in reference to Councillor Moore's question about the facility assessments. So I think just to preserve what we have and then kind of put a plan together where we're going in the future to replace that floor or do any other major facility upgrades.
So the facility assessment study, what's the timeframe of that? And maybe for our next meeting, we could get a breakdown of that 47 to be able to understand what is proposed for each of the community halls. CEO Schmidt?
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just further to some of the comments that our manager has provided, so additional funds that are being set aside for 2020 is Yard 3 up in Elmville. We're looking at replacing overhead doors. We're looking at replacing the front and side deck at the Anton Mills Community Hall. We're also looking at repainting the Minisink Pavilion, structural component of that. The foundation repairs, the flooring. Looking at the Hillsdale Community Hall, looking at a snow cover, and I'll let the manager speak to that one if there's questions on what that is. And then also at the Phelpston Rink House, we're looking at installing some rubber flooring. And Dorn Park washroom, we're looking at installing some cabinetry and some flooring. And I believe that's the majority of them.
Councillor Chapman, did you have a follow-up?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and also back to Manager Anderson. With the leaks at Minisink Community Hall, once you find the leaks out, because that will stop the leak in the bowling alley, correct? And then will the bowling alley pin setter area be restored?
Manager Anderson?
Yes, through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Ma Chapman. In regards to the foundation leak, it has, I guess, no issues with the bowling alley. So we won't have to do anything to the bowling alley. A couple years ago, we did put a sump pump in there to remove the water from there. And that's working. Basically, the leak is coming down and just excavating and waterproofing that foundation, and then maybe taking a look at the drainage around the building.
Follow on?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through to Manager Anderson. Is it coming through that wall in the hallway by the washroom, by the men's washroom?
Yes, through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Ma Chapman. It is. That's exactly the point. It's coming through. It's not a widespread area, so it's easily identifiable. It's just a matter of getting somebody in there with a professional opinion and basically excavating the area.
Councillor Moore?
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Allen. I was hoping just to get the timeline for the assessment study, and what you think how quickly we could get that done before we're spending a lot of money or opening a can of worms like foundations. Thank you.
I'll direct that to CEO first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the facility assessment study, assuming council approves the 2020 budget, we'd be looking to go to market as soon as we can in the new year. So the idea was hopefully you can get out to market with an RFP, I would say probably by the end of February-ish, and then hopefully have some study and preliminary information by probably May, June-ish. So the foundation is something, unfortunately, that's happening right now. We need to fix it. We need to take a look at it. So I'm not sure that we can somewhat avoid those costs, but again, we have put some money set aside for that. Hopefully it's not as bad as what it could be, but again, foundation repairs, sometimes you don't know. So.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you to Manager Anderson. Before we discuss the joint service agreement or service agreement with the City of Barrie, the rubber flooring, typically in the past we've repurposed flooring from dressing rooms or other areas. Has that all been used, or what is Phelpston requiring that we can't repurpose?
Manager Anderson?
So through you, Mayor Allen, to Deputy Coughlin. We tried to repurpose the flooring from the Elmville Arena when we ripped it up, but due to the amount of glue and stuff that was on it, we weren't able to salvage it. So we do not have any existing rubber in stock. I'm working with some suppliers where they might have some one-offs that are, quite substantially cheaper. So in the end, hopefully, we can, again, look at the most economical route, whether it's just an outlay where they walk in and around the bench areas and kind of leave the middle open. But again, that will all go on quotes and go from there.
Follow on?
Thank you. Secondly, I don't know if Councillor Ritchie's pertains to the flooring. My next question, okay, it does. It's not about flooring.
Councillor Ritchie?
No, I just wanted to continue on Phelps Rink House flooring. We've been talking about it for a while. Square footage, are we 600 square feet? Somewhere's in around there. Just what are we looking at there for a cost factor? You can just, won't hold you to it, but it's got to be 20 by 30,
I'll go to
600.
CAO Schmidt, please, first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Ritchie. We put a provisional number of $5,000 in the budget for 2020 for that.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, and I guess this conversation has been ongoing since I've been here. There is a service agreement with the City of Barrie which allows the residents of Springwater access to programs as a non-resident, sorry, at the residential rate rather than paying the non-residential rate. And I feel now we are at a flux of, we're experiencing the growing pains. We're trying to bring our recreation programs in-house within Springwater, and we're still paying the City of Barrie to provide our residents with services that we don't provide at the same time as trying to grow and provide those services to ourselves. So I believe at last check, we're up over $80,000 a year that we offer to the City of Barrie. We have been requesting annually for postal code or identification as to how many residents from Springwater are using those services in the City of Barrie, so we can put a cost to the benefit. I have yet to see that information. My question to council becomes, at what time do we now absorb that cost, pull it back from the City of Barrie, and start investing that money into our own programs and into our own facilities as we continue to grow? In saying that, if there's, if 10 of the 20,000 in Springwater are using that, then it's a great value. But if we only have a handful of, or 100 residents utilizing that availability, that $80,000 a year, I mean, it's grown from 65 to 80 in the time I've been here. There's a percentage increase that is apparently non-negotiable. There's always been the concern that if we pull out of that agreement, City of Barrie will never offer it to us again. So from what I've learned, it's a one-time offer that's been extended over many, many years. But if we do pull out, we may not get it back. But I think that the amount now is substantive enough that it should be something that council is considering, seeing what we are being required in $99,000 a year EDHS staffing. Well, if we require that money in order to staff our own facilities rather than paying, this facility wasn't offered to our residents last year, it is offered this year. So at what time do we say we're no longer investing in the City of Barrie's recreational programming? We're gonna start to invest in our own. So I don't know if we can reach out to the City of Barrie to find out how many of our residents are actually utilizing, and not a guess. We received guesses from them numerous times, actual postal codes. I believe it was 2 years ago they said that they changed their admin system over so that addresses were actually required, so they may be able to provide that information to us. But I think that it's definitely something we need to look at because it's a lot of money.
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, definitely we can take a look at that. Our new Director of Recreation starts next Monday, so we can, but with that said, I would, and I'd have to double check. I don't know what, I believe the agreement came forward January of 2019 to council for approval. I just would have to take a look at the terms of that agreement. I'm not that familiar with it, but we can take a look at those terms and we can definitely seek some further information from City of Barrie as to how many residents are potentially utilizing those services and report back to council with that information.
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I guess I'm thinking to myself, there's going to be programs that likely, I know that the idea was to not only allow them to sign up for the programs in Barrie at the same cost, but also provide them the opportunity to get in on those programs at the same time that the Barrie residents did. I guess what I'd like to know, if it's at all possible, is we have programs that we do provide, And I'm wondering how many people would be availing themselves in Barrie of programs which we don't provide to our own residents here, as opposed to programs that they can access there because they happen to live too far away, say from Elmville or something like that. Would that be at all possible to do, C.O. Schmidt? It just seems to my way of thinking that that might be a bit of a disparity, that the residents, unless they sign up for it, won't get a particular program, and that we're kind of providing that opportunity so other residents aren't availing themselves of that.
CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councilor Cabral. So again, that's something that we could seek from the city of Barrie and see what kind of information they can provide to us and report back to council.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Marilyn. I think that this would be beneficial to send this back to our Recreation Advisory Committee. Further to Councillor Cabral's comments, aside from aquatics, I mean, we don't have a pool. We know that we don't offer that. But the discussion at the time was whether it's a yoga session. So let's say the city of Barrie has it. Well, we would be canceling our Hillsdale and our Anton Mills yoga. We'd offer it, but we wouldn't have enough people sign up because they're going to the city of Barrie. So we're offering the programs, but if people have the option and timing, so it does need to be a discussion, because if we are offering it and it's just they like that schedule better, or that's part of their routine, or they work there and that works better for them, often we would have 7 or 8 people sign up for a class that required 12. Well, if we weren't offering it in the city of Barrie, those 4 people might have attended Hillsdale or Anton Mills, and it would become a local initiative. So I don't know if it's a motion that I need to have it referred to the Recreation Advisory Committee to better understand it, because that's where I learned this information, and I haven't sat on it this year, so I don't know if it's been discussed at RAC, the initiative this year. I think that it would be beneficial to us to have that opinion brought forward as well.
So, would you like to put forward a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Just that the partnership agreement with the city of Barrie be referred to the Recreation Advisory Committee for comment.
And do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Chapman? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just on that, I take it that's just a motion to ask them for comment to come back to us, which this is along the same lines, but when you spoke about the aquatics, I see that as something that maybe those particular aspects of the agreement might be something that council might be in agreement with, because we don't provide that. But a lot of the overlapping ones, as I'm saying, are ones that we're really kind of paying for things that we're already providing, so.
Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, and I support the initiative to find out how many people use it and if it's justifiable the cost. I do not support it going through RAC, because it's not up to RAC, which are paid volunteers, if you like, that deal with recreational programs, to decide how Springwater taxpayers' money is going to be spent. So while I support the motion to find out how many people use it, if it's justifiable, I don't support it going through RAC for the reasons I said.
The motion reads that the partnership agreement with the City of Barrie be referred to the Recreation Advisory Committee for comment. Any questions or discussions on that?
Recorded vote, please.
Councillor Cabral?
I have to apologize, Mayor Allen. I just want to know if RAC has ever been involved in this type of commentary before, or suggesting to us where we should not be spending our funds.
First of all, I'll go to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Is the intent of the motion for them to comment through and make a recommendation, but not make a decision, right? Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. Like all advisory committees within the municipality, they don't have the preview, other than the Economic Development Committee. They don't hold a budget, whether it's on a playground or where that playground's going to be or what equipment goes into it. The intent or the purpose of the Recreation Advisory Committee is to create a base of individuals who are professional or who have expertise within the community, who understand recreation, to advise the council on things that like this, that's where I've learned of it. So it's simply to put it back to that panel, to get their expertise, their understanding, to provide us with more information so that we can move forward.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just further to that, I think the intent would be is that through our Recreation Department, new Director of Recreation, and our Recreation and Special Events Coordinator, getting a copy and having a discussion with the City of Barrie representatives, and then going back to the RAC committee and having a fulsome discussion, and from that, bringing forward a recommendation to council for council's consideration as to where we go from here. So I hope that's the intent, is that obviously this wouldn't just be going to RAC, it would be going to our full-time recreation staff as well to assist in that discussion.
Councillor Cabral?
I'm just wondering, Mayor Allen, if it might, as a suggestion, if we might simply just refer it back to staff and allow them to proceed with what they would normally do, because it sounds to me like they're going to include some discussion with them anyway.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and I guess bluntly, yes, obviously referred through to staff, and I believe Manager Anderson has acknowledged that comment. But to me, if we are not going to utilize the committees which we have formed, then why do we have these committees? So if we're not going to involve them in this discussion, it's an 83,000, and I'm using that number because that just comes to mind. These are significant, and this is an ongoing operating cost. So to me, this needs to be discussed if it's not this year, if it's, the information doesn't come forward in time for this budget. I definitely want it on our desk and a decision to be made by this council prior to next year's budget, because this cost continues to increase while our services continue to increase, and I think that it needs to be referred to staff and the Recreation Advisory Committee for comment.
Okay.
It reads that the partnership agreement with the City of Barrie be referred to staff and the Recreation Advisory Committee for comment. All those in favor? Oh, it's recorded vote.
A recorded vote was requested by Councillor Hannah. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Cabral?
Yes.
Councillor Hannah?
No.
Councillor Chapman?
Yes.
Councillor Moore?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Yes.
And Mayor Allen.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Okay, so moving on. Oh, you have a point? Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you to Manager Anderson. Further to that, our service agreements on things like the library with the city, or sorry, municipality of Oro, and the arena or recreation programs with Tiny Township. I believe Tiny Township's still sitting at $7,500, which has never changed. At what point do we reevaluate the amount of money that we require from them, much like our service agreement with the City of Barrie that increases every year? I think that might be worthwhile for us to take a look at, and I do believe that it's time for an increase on those.
Start with CAO Schmidt on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. So again, that is something that we can, staff can take back and start to have those discussions with Tiny, and obviously build a new relationship with our new Director of Rec, and again, see what kind of programs that they may want, that we may not be offering, that they may be interested in partaking in as well, right? So.
Councillor Ritchie?
Just to take that a step further there, Mayor Allen, in regards to the EDHS and the programs we're going to be putting on, be a lot of people coming down. That you might want to mention that as well too. Don't be scared to put the whip to them, because they got lots of this.
Fair enough.
Okay, all right, I think we're ready to move on to tab 9, planning.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tab 9 being the Planning Committee of Adjustment and Economic Development and the Community Improvement Plan. So again, tab 9 in your budget binders. So year over year impact or increase is approximately $76,000 increase. And again, this next slide here provides some further details that make up that $76,000. So the first one is a reduction in one-time grant funding that we're not expected to receive in 2020, so that equates to about a $17,000 impact. Again, annualized cost for new staff approved in 2019, that's approximately just under a $16,000 impact. The cost of living adjustment and merit increases of about $15,500. Economic and development initiatives, so some promotional events and such that I think, as you may be aware, through the program that we had with the county is essentially starting to reduce some of the funding towards the township, and hence we're having to take on some more of these economic development initiatives under our own dollars. So that equates to approximately $15,500. We're seeing a reduction in the official plan application user fee revenues by approximately $10,000. And then the Committee of Adjustment board members are seeking some additional dollars for training and development of those board members in the amount of $2,500 in 2020. So that equates to the $76,000 and change. There are no program changes slated for planning in 2020. So with that said, I will hand it over to our Director of Planning to discuss the major initiatives for 2020.
Director Spagnell.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The major initiatives in the Planning Department and Economic Development relate to Phase 2 of the official plan review update process. What that initiative really consists of is the completion of background studies that are required to formulate draft policy. It also includes public consultation through public meetings, open houses, and also some educational sessions and whatnot to go and relay the draft policies to the public so that comment can be obtained. In addition to that, backyard chicken review is going to be coming to the forefront in 2020 as well. Staff will also be conducting a secondary suite review, which may be part of the official plan review process, or it may be segmented out for the sake of time to try to expedite things to get policy in place to deal with second units. In addition to that, we've got the County Municipal Comprehensive Review, which we expect the county is going to move forward with now that things have settled down on the policy front at the provincial level, and they have a little bit more guidance, I think, from the province in that respect. We have ongoing appeals with the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal that include the County Environmental Resource Recovery Center, OPA 38, so that's the Midhurst Secondary Plan with respect to Carson Trail, and a couple of minor appeals that are on the books right now. Pre-consultation's actually ahead of schedule. We're expecting that will be finalized actually in 2019. And in addition to that one there, the staff will be moving forward with the Township Surplus Lands Review. From an economic development standpoint, subject to budgeting, there's the maintaining the implementation of the Community Improvement Plan, the CIP. One of the key initiatives that was also earmarked was the community profiles. Now that the website was complete, a community profile was to be carried forward with. And then, of course, there would be ongoing support for events throughout the municipality as part of the economic development program.
Questions, comments? Director Spagnell, is there any impact with the moves that we took back the planning approval from the county? What impact will that have on our resources?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. As of now, there's not an immediate impact from a financial perspective. Staff was really following through and facilitating the process from a circulation standpoint, from a review standpoint. So at this point in time, there really isn't a financial impact with respect to the delegated authority that the township received for subdivision approval. Now that said, if there are any additional impacts, if there is additional development that comes on stream, that's not to say that there won't be the need for additional resources in the future, but at this point in time, we're not experiencing a significant demand from a subdivision processing perspective. The one thing I would like to mention is that from an application standpoint, we are experiencing high volume of applications for zoning bylaw amendments, Committee of Adjustment applications, As of October, we were at 90, I think it was 92 applications, 91 or 92 applications, which was surpassing our totals from last year. So we're expecting we're going to be well over 100 by the end of the year.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Okay. It's pretty smooth. So we're moving to tab 11, are we? Policing and BIA?
So yes, Mr. Mayor, so tabs 10 and 11 actually are service partners, so
1 second, CO.
Mayor Allen,
Councillor Cabral?
if it's possible at this point, I'd like to make a couple of motions
Okay, pertaining to,
pertaining to the budget.
okay,
I'm hoping it won't take too long.
okay.
The first motion I'd like to make is, whereas at the June 19th, 2019 regular meeting, council requested an item for future consideration for information for the purchase of a projector to be used for our community events throughout the township. And whereas at the October 2nd, 2019 regular meeting, council received an information report regarding purchase options for a community projector and suggested accessories. Be it therefore resolved that $7,500 for the purchase of a community projector and accessories be included in the final draft of the 2020 budget, funds to come from the modernization fund.
Councillor Cabral,
Yes.
I'd like to hold those to the new initiatives and program changes, if I may, please.
At what point would that take place, Mayor Allen?
Tonight, before we leave?
I think that would be okay then, thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, moving on with tab 11, policing and BIA.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just again, dealing with tabs 10 and 11, so obviously our service partners include the library, Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, the Severn Sound Environmental Association, policing through the Ontario Provincial Police, as well as the business improvement area. So we have had discussions on the top three there, if you will, or the first three. So in 2020, this slide here captures the net expenditures for our service partners. The library coming in with just under a $60,000 increase over last year. The Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority with a $7,900 request increase, and the Severn Sound Environmental Association at just under $37,000. Policing and BIA both are fully funded. Policing is fully funded through the policing charge, and the BIA is fully funded through the separate BIA charge that we assess on businesses within that business improvement area. Sorry, I jumped to tab 12 already. Is there any questions from members of council as it relates to our service partners?
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through to CEO Schmidt. I don't know if these numbers were updated, or were these prior to the asks from the library? I just want to know if they're still accurate.
So,
CEO?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Cabral. So these don't include the program changes.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Nottawasaga Valley, didn't we get a letter back in the summertime saying 0% increase, and yet they came here and they're looking for 3%? Mayor Allen, what's the mood around the table over there with other municipalities about this? Are they begrudgingly following this, or are some of them willing to hold up and hand them what they got last year? Because I think, you know, it's supposed to be the members that run the show over there. And I think if enough of them got on board, you might be able to push that through, but I don't sit over there. I'm going to leave it up to you. Thanks.
I believe I communicated when the budget was initially passed in draft form before it went out to the municipalities. I put forward a motion to have a 0% increase pursuant to that letter that we've discussed from Minister Urick. It was discussed and defeated. So by virtue of that, the majority of the board still favored the increase that you saw as presented to us a few sessions ago by the MVCA.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. That answers the question.
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just two members of council. So coming out of that discussion from November 25th, I believe it was, there was some follow-up questions that were provided both to the NVCA and to the SSEA. So the comments that were provided directly to the NVCA were essentially, there were some comments around the table regarding the MOU and why aren't we getting the additional $7,000 back to us. So that has been posed to them, as well as there's the question of, to your point, Councillor Ritchie, why are we seeing an increase in 2020 when specifically the minister has indicated no increases at all. So I've yet to receive a response on that email, but if and when I do, I'll make sure that that's communicated to all members of council.
Deputy Mayor Colvin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you, I guess, to Clerk Chaperone. The motions that were passed by our council have been circulated to all 444 municipalities, 36 CAs, Conservation Ontario, everybody. There has been traction with other municipalities to support the initiative. It will be on the county floor we have county on Wednesday of this week. And I will be pulling that to ask for the County of Simcoe's support behind our first resolution that was passed, supporting Minister Urick in his initiative, in the province's initiative to reevaluate the conservation authorities, not the NVCA one specifically. But while other municipalities or the board members of the NVCA have supported the increase, further to Mayor Allen's comments, it needs to go back to the municipalities because it is the councils who make the decision, and it's not an easy decision to make. When a levy's put in front of you, we've always just been told that we have to pay it. This year, at our 99,000, or we'll call it 200 for number's sake, our 200,000 is reflective of a 3% increase, which is the 7,000, but an additional outlining $7,000 of duplication, which was not taken off. So I do appreciate CAO Schmidt going back to the NVCA, because I don't feel that we should be paying an increase at all, nor should we be paying money now that there is a number or a value associated with duplication of services. That money is our residents, not the CAs.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to speak to Severn Sound. Nice lady came here, made a great presentation, but their budget has actually doubled from what it was before. In 19, it was 44,000, and it's now gone up to 95,000. But I recall during the discussions, there was $5,000 for invasive species, and there was another, I think, about $11,000 for asset management that had been added on. I guess my question is to the folks at this table or our CAO, are we comfortable with that, or do we want to consider not paying those things, or do we have to pay them?
CAO, I believe at least one of those is a program change, which we're going to be reviewing at the end of tonight's session, right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, similar to the email that I sent to NVCA, there was a follow-up email to the SSEA regarding a couple of items that council had sought at that meeting. One of them was with regards to the program change, which was specific to the Sustainable Severn Sound, where they were supposed to provide additional information to council so that we had a fulsome understanding as to what that pertained to. I've yet to receive that information. And I believe there was comments about why their base budget is increasing. There was, the asset management piece was more specific to NVCA. There was an additional ask of, I believe, $5,800 for the Orr Lake water quality monitoring. There was a question at that session, I believe the Deputy Mayor may have asked the question as to what Aqua was doing or what they do with Orr Lake. And actually I received an email from Aqua today indicating that they actually don't do any type of water quality monitoring in Orr Lake. Essentially what they do is they measure the effluent that's coming out of the Elmville wastewater treatment plant that goes into the Wye River. So they don't actually have any studies that I'm aware of, or the response was aware of, that's happening in Orr Lake. So.
Thank you. Clerk Chaperon just reminded me of something we discussed and approved before. So Clerk Chaperon, can you review that with council? Yeah, do that.
Thank you. So on November 25th, council carried two different motions. One was for the base budget of 81,683, as you see on the screen, which was forwarded for consideration in the final draft of the budget, as well as the motion for the Severn Sound sustainable Severn Sound in the amount of 13,764, again, to be considered in the final draft of the 2020 budget. So those will come back with the final draft of the budget for final approval.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, and through you to Clerk Chaperone, the Severn Sound, Sustainable Severn Sound, the 13,000 for the Partners in Climate Change, that was going to come forward with information about any existing provincial or federal, any other climate change initiatives that we as taxpayers may be participating in as well?
Clerk Chaparral? Or CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, that was the information that we were seeking in the email subsequent to that meeting. I have yet to receive that information. The other item I just recalled was, I believe there was discussion at that budget meeting with respect to the source water protection and whether or not the province was actually going to be funding the source water protection for the Severn Sound. And so that's another item that I've yet to receive information on. I believe, I'm going to say it was around $7,000, give or take, was our portion of that. So again, those are items, those three items essentially are still outstanding. Well, two items, I guess now, are still outstanding with the SSEA.
Okay. Moving on.
Okay. So if we turn to tab 12 of the budget binder, which is the corporate revenue section. So year over year, there is a net increase of approximately $984,000, mainly due to the increased taxation revenue or assessment growth, which equates to approximately just under $920,000. There was also an increase in the Ontario Municipal Partnership Funding, or the OMPF, from 2019 to 2020. And also, we're anticipating an increase in our investment income in 2020. So those are the main drivers of why our revenues are increasing by $984,000 over 2019, sorry.
Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Increase in the Ontario Municipal Partnership. What's the amount of money there that we got this year?
CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was just shy of $1 million. I'd have to get the exact number. It was an increase of approximately just under $30,000 over 2019, but it was in around the 980,000 mark. I'd have to confirm that number though for you.
Other comments on this? Okay, proceed please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that concludes the tax-based operating budget discussion. Again, obviously, council, subject to council's will if there's more comments later on. But we'd like to get into tab 13, which is our draft water operating budget. So this slide here just provides some commentary on our water rates. So again, they are based on the 2017 water and wastewater rate that council approved back in 2017. And again, the rates are calculated to cover annual costs, including all operating costs and capital costs related specifically to water infrastructure. So again, and council did pass a bylaw back in 2017 regarding this. So the 2020 draft water rate supported operating budget, we just provide some comparison here from 2019 to 2020. So in 2019, we actually, our gross revenues exceeded our gross expenditures by approximately just over $1 million, and hence we were in a position to transfer that same amount of money to our water reserve fund. In 2020, we are in a similar position, not the same amount, but we are in a similar position where gross revenues are expected to exceed gross expenditures, and hence we are projecting to transfer approximately $666,000 into the wastewater, or into a water reserve fund in 2020. So what does this mean for a typical user of our water system? Again, rates are not proposed to increase for water, so we'll deal with the first line here. So any resident that's strictly on municipal water should not see a rate increase in 2020. This doesn't mean that their bill won't increase, because the rates are based on your consumption. So if your consumption changes, obviously If your consumption goes up, the rate will stay the same, but your bill will go up because you've consumed more. So just to make sure we're on the same page there. Looking out with respect to our water reserve funds, so we are projecting to increase our water reserve funds over the next number of years. There is a slight dip in 2020 from 2019. Again, this is related to what's forecasted in our water capital budget for 2020. And then, of course, like I said, over the next number of years, we are looking at increases to our water reserve fund. This is all subject to change. There is staff are proposing to update our water and wastewater rate study in 2020. So again, once we go through that, these graphs will obviously change. So that concludes the information that I want to present on the water operating budget. If there's any questions from council.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The average water usage, so a person in Hillsdale or wherever that's, what's the cost on a yearly basis for, like, average?
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Ritchie. So on this slide here, it actually does show the average residential user consumes approximately 220 cubic meters per year. So based on that, essentially they would see approximately just under a $600 bill annually. That's the annual charge. So we bill 4 times a year. So it would be 1/4 of that every quarter.
That's not bad. That's like, and you've got a good clean water supply too. Nothing wrong with that.
Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor. CAO Schmidt, we had this discussion and I don't remember the answer, so you have to clarification. I'm talking about the contractual services. It's gone up by $323,000. Part of it's Aqua. But my understanding is when WAMCO puts in the new water meters, they read those water meters for us. And when I look at the new hire position in Public Works, it talks, one of the requirements there is for staff to do the water meter readings and do them more frequently. So my question at that time, and I'm not sure we come up with a final answer, was, are we taking that away from WAMCO and now giving it to staff? And if we are, would the contractual services that we have with WAMCO not be coming down instead of going up, even though we have the increase from Aqua?
CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to Councillor Hanna, so correct. So the idea is that the Public Works Assistant program change that's being requested for 2020, part of those responsibilities would be to bring the water meter reading in-house. And so to your point, Councillor Hanna, yes, the idea, the funding, that 55,000 offset would be, a portion of that would be the reduction in the Aqua, or in the WAMCO contracted services for residential reading of meters. So again, we can get into that in a few minutes with regards to the program change, but essentially that's part of that responsibility is to bring that in-house and to conduct our residential reads on a much more frequent basis. And I'll leave it at that and we can discuss it a little bit more.
Thank you. I just didn't see a reduction in the contracting services underwater. I know it's gone up because of WAMCO, but I would have expected to see it come down if we're taking that in-house.
CEO.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hanna, again, when we look at the actual program change, you'll see an offsetting $55,000 in change for revenues. Part of that would be a reduction in the WAMCO. So if council doesn't agree with the proposed program change, we still have to go ahead and read those meters. And so we've left the money in the base budget, but should council look at making the approval of the Public Works Assistant, then obviously we would be transferring those dollars to cover the staff as opposed to covering WAMCO.
Okay, moving on to wastewater.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So similar on the wastewater side of things, again, just kind of some preliminary information here. Similar to water, again, the rate study was approved back in 2017, or prepared in 2017 and approved in 2017. Similar to water, the wastewater is, the rates are set to cover all annual costs and both from an operating and capital perspective. So in 2020, or for, again, to look at 2020 to 2019 comparison, in 2019, we were actually in a position where we had gross revenues slightly exceeding our gross expenditures by approximately $3,000. So in 2019, we were able to contribute just over $3,000 into the wastewater reserve fund. Unfortunately, in 2020, not necessarily the same outlook. We are looking at gross expenditures exceeding gross revenues by approximately $164,000, and hence we will be looking at drawing on the wastewater reserve fund in the amount of approximately $164,000 in 2020 in order to fully fund our wastewater operation. So again, similar to the water side here, just if a resident was just on municipal wastewater, essentially these should say 2019 and 2020, my apologies. So in the 2018 column, which should be 2019, they would pay $872 and change, and in 2020, which shows 2019, would show $910, let's say. So they can expect basically a $37 increase or 4.3% increase. Again, this assumes an average residential user consumes 220 cubic meters of water per year. You may say, well, we're talking about wastewater, but we do use our water consumption to bill our wastewater, typical across Ontario. So again, for an average typical residential user that's on water and wastewater, they could expect to see an increase of $37 or a 2.5% increase on both the water and wastewater side of the business. Looking out for our wastewater reserve funds, we are forecasting that the reserve fund is projected to go into the negative. This is mainly due to the 10-year capital plan and the wastewater infrastructure that's planned in our 10-year capital plan. So again, in 2020, we will be looking at updating the water and wastewater rate study, and with the idea of likely either pushing some projects out and or needing to increase our rates as it relates to wastewater. Any questions from members of council on the wastewater side of things? Okay, so the last item I believe we had on the agenda for this evening was to discuss the new initiatives or program changes. So there are 4 program changes that the township, our staff are looking at for council's consideration for 2020.
CAO, I believe we have to cover a motion first.
Sorry.
So the motion is that the 220 draft operating budget tax, water and wastewater rate-based operating budget be concluded for consideration in the final draft of the 220 budget. Need a mover and seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Coghlan, Councillor Cabral. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Sorry, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as mentioned, there's 4 specific program changes that are being requested by township staff. There was one, which, as we mentioned, from the SSEA, which we'll seek further information on. And then council has already made their decision on the 2 library program changes. So with respect to the township ones, I will highlight them here, and then I will ask the various individuals or staff, senior staff, to speak more directly to them. So the first one is the Public Works Assistant. This is obviously from our Public Works Department. Looking at a $55,000 gross expenditure, but again, 100% being covered by the water reserve funds, so no net tax impact. Secondly, we have the outdoor maintenance worker conversion from, again, in 2019, council agreed or approved a contract for this position until the end of 2019. We're looking at converting that contract to a permanent full-time position in the amount of just under $74,000. The next one is the outdoor maintenance worker, which is a brand new request or new permanent full-time position. Again, the cost here is approximately $49,000. That assumes 10 months being active with the township. And then the last one is a park maintenance casual attendants. So the idea here is to replace 2 summer student positions with 2 park maintenance casual attendants. So the park maintenance casual attendants would be essentially $65,000. The $24,000 and change under revenues is essentially removing the 2 students for a net impact of just over $40,000. So with that said, pass things over to our Director of Public Works and our Manager of Parks and Facilities to discuss in more detail.
Okay, and before we do that, other operating related motions such as Councillor Cabral's, I believe, is an operating as opposed to a capital, right? Am I correct? They're capital expenditures. Okay. Okay. CEO Schmidt?
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, on that one, I believe the motion was to consider it to be funded out of the modernization funds. So I believe further on in the schedule agenda, we are looking at the modernization funds and how we might utilize
Okay.
those funds. So that might be the more appropriate time to discuss that.
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm just wondering if the other one would be appropriate to do now then.
And, yes, Clerk Chaperon?
Thank you. So just to know how the agenda has been structured, was to go through the operating budget, which has just concluded. To go through the operating budget, to go through the program changes that are being proposed by staff. And then there is a section for council motions regarding the operating budget. So it can be left to that time, or like, as mentioned earlier, if there isn't a motion on the table, council does have the opportunity to put a motion on the table, but there is a section specific in the agenda that was earmarked for council motions regarding operating as well as capital later on.
Okay, I had indicated to Councillor Cabral that we dealt with tonight, so, but,
I'm fine with waiting if that's appropriate.
okay,
Mayor Allen,
all right.
as long as we get to it.
Okay, all right then. So, Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question, because a couple of council meetings ago, I asked if, under items for future consideration, about us receiving a record for transparency of the number of staff and council members who have township credit cards, and seeing what expenditures took place during 2019 on those credit cards, because we as council never get to see that information. And the same as we all have these personal $3,000 a year, I think it is, that we can spend on certain things. Again, we have no record of who spends what and where that money goes. I know what I spend, but I don't know what everybody else spends. So my item for future consideration, everybody agreed to it, and it was stated that we would receive that information. We haven't received it as yet. My question is, when will we be receiving that, or are we not receiving it?
Okay, CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe there was two items, the monthly check registers, which have come to council, and council's seen that. The quarterly corporate credit cards, you can blame me on that. Staff had those available for today, but I hope to have them reviewed and provided to council by Wednesday of this week, so.
Okay. Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. In regards to the program change, Public Works Assistant, outdoor maintenance worker, all these new hires, it'd be nice to know what job, what are they going to be doing? You're an assistant, okay, so doing what? Like, I would like to know, if we're hiring people, what's their job description? What are they going to be doing? And what qualifications are being required? It's just more information than what I see there.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
So we're back into this, so I'll let you proceed with this section and the individual asks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the program change justification forms, you would find, the Public Works Assistant one you would find under tab 7, which is Public Works, and then the 3 for the Recreation Parks and Facilities are found under tab 8. It provides a little bit more justification as to what the positions are seeking. In lieu of that, I guess, I will pass things over to maybe our Director of Public Works to talk about the Public Works Assistant position, and then our Manager of Parks and Facilities can talk about the other 3 remaining program changes.
Thank you. Who's going to start? Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Yes, so this year we're looking to add a Public Works Assistant to help alleviate some pressures that we're experiencing in the office, as well as to try and get rid of some contracted activities, as we've just discussed a little bit earlier. So we're proposing that person would obviously receive and review complaints that are directed to the Public Works Department. They'll follow up on those, meeting with the public, meeting with the operations coordinator to determine what, if anything, can be done regarding those complaints. They will review and inspect completed works that we don't actually get a chance to inspect now, so road occupancy permits, municipal consents, and entrance permits. Right now, those get completed, and really, unless there's a complaint, we don't review those. They'll liaise with some of the Public Works maintenance contracted activities. So they'll review the spring sweeping, that's a contracted services, so they can follow that, make sure their streets are done. They'll follow the contractor in terms of the catch basin and ditch inlet cleaning, as well as the other ones, the hot mix asphalt, surface treatment, and microsurface. In addition to that, during the winter, we hire a part-time winter patroller, so that we would no longer do that. The duties would fall on this person to provide that service in the wintertime, in addition to our full-time patroller. They'll also carry out guide rail, street light, road signs, sidewalk inventories and inspections. And then with relation to the water and wastewater component, they'll do the commercial grease trap inspections, the commercial water meter reads, the residential water meter reads, and the final water meter reads. I can go, actually, in terms of requirements for this position, we're looking for a grade 12 graduate with over 4 years of municipal environment experience, DZ license, obviously public relations skills, knowledge of our road patrol software, work order creation within that software, knowledge of the maintenance standards, knowledge of our census water meter software and hardware, the knowledge of the Field Logic software, which is related to the water meter reads, and knowledge of maintenance and construction activities.
Okay, good. Any further questions? We're going to be doing motions on each of these program changes, right? So, Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I thought I saw somebody else, but I'm ready. I did review this, and part of the things that I was looking for there is in the justification portions. There's the continued use of the word increase, but there's no measurement, there's no bar, there's no base standard for us to actually compare it to. So I'm kind of looking at this and thinking to myself, there's a director, there's an operations coordinator, operations technician, the recently hired asset management coordinator, and I'm not 100% sure, but when we look later on at a capital expense they're asking for, it says there's 6 people, so I'm going to have to maybe suggest that the patroller's also working out of the administration office in, I guess, the summertime. It causes me a little bit of difficulty that the funding source for this position is proposed to be from water reserves, which kind of makes it seem like, you know, it's not a tax increase, and that's quite true, it's not. However, I also have to consider that the residents who are customers for the wastewater and the water, it's very much like a tax. They're getting a service and they don't control what it's going to cost them. And I think it's important that we as councillors consider that whatever we do here, it's going to have an impact on the people who are actually footing the bill. So that presents me a problem, because it's not someone who's going to be doing it, strictly water reads or that, but it's going to be someone that's going to be doing a lot of other township functions, proposed functions, that isn't related to the water or wastewater aspect. It just seems that that's kind of easy because it's on a recovery-based service, but like I say, I think it's critical that we as council recognize that the people who are getting those services are paying for those services. While water rates, I believe, continued to be held at the 2018 rate, wastewater, however, increased 4.3% for residential and 4.4% for commercial in 2019, and proposed to increase another 4.3% in 2020. I believe that's for the wastewater. The program assistant change, as I said, seems to have the lion's share of duties towards non-water type of functions. Quarterly reads are the present norm, and I have to question whether going to bi-weekly reads, it sounds kind of nice, but it also increases the cost to all the customers that are having those mailings and receiving those bills. It doesn't decrease the costs for them. It actually increases them. Regular intervals for the meter reads, since we know they're going to happen, actually present an ideal potential cost saver if contracted out. And from what I hear, we do have a contractor who's installing the meters. They're still in transition, and the contractor is reading the meters. And I suspect that the transition for water meters is quite a ways from being completed. There's no information or data to illustrate really the number of meetings, complaint numbers, or road occupancy permits, or municipal consents, or entrance permits, etc., that provide us with any meaningful comparison to what's been going on in the last few years. It would be nice to have some numbers that said we had an increase of, we had 10 last year, and this year, or the year before last, we had 10. The year before that one, we had 6. This year, we have 25. And, we're having, struggling trying to get it done. When we talk about this public works person being, looking at the contracted work, the sweeping, the catch basin, the ditch inlet cleaning, hot mix asphalt surface treatment, micro surface treatment, pre-construction reviews and investigations, collection of data and condition rating for various assets, roadway infrastructure and sidewalk inventories and inspections, I would think that this would take some level of expertise, someone who likely, I would suggest maybe the director or possibly the public works coordinator that has the expertise in these areas to go and assess whether these jobs are being done correctly. I suggest that the oversight of all of the other ones there with respect to this program change does require a significant level of expertise in order to provide any meaningful oversight or approval of contracted work that's being completed. In respect of the inspections, ratings, and inventory gathering, I kind of got the sense that this might be an overlap in the realm of the recently hired asset management coordinator. Assistance to the full-time patroller by providing part-time patrolling, and I think I heard that it would be in the winter time. I'm just trying to see how that would work when in the wintertime the patroller tends to work in the nighttime to provide that coverage. And then this person would also be, I guess, expected to work in the daytime hours. And I just see that there's a significant difficulty for me based on where the money's coming from and what the duties are that this person's expected to do. So it's not so much a question as it's just some concerns that I have with this particular position.
Okay, thank you. I'll direct it to CAO and then Director as appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through to Councillor Cabral. So some of the things with regards to the water, the funding of it. So the position itself, what we're looking at is an increase or an ask from the Water Reserve Fund to bump this position, if you will. So the idea is that we already have funds in the operating budget, tax-based operating budget for the winter patroller. And so those we're utilizing those funds to do some of those tax-based functions, if you know, that you were describing. So, and then the additional money is required to offset the water functions that we're looking at having this position look after. The other side of it too is that, you know, one of the things that we're starting, or that we've experienced through the water meter replacement program is we have residents calling on a frequent basis, essentially seeking someone to come out and look at their water meter. So we either call Aqua and or we call WAMCO, a third party, to go out and take those calls. My concern is on a go forward basis, the municipality is going to continue to grow, as most of us have probably experienced at your own home. Someone coming to your house that isn't identified as a township employee, you tend to not open the door to them, if you know, and rightly so. The intent is to essentially, with this position, increase our customer service as it relates to water services and wastewater services in that matter. Typically, right now we don't have that. We don't have that level of service provided to our residents, and so it is a bit of a concern. We've had some dealings where WAMCO has gone out to our residents and they haven't been received meter. We would have more control over having a staff member go out and investigate what's going on in that in that resident's house, and hopefully being able to assist that residents in a much more customer service friendly atmosphere, if you will. Also, one of the things that came out of the wastewater and water rate study back in 2017 was residents indicating they would like to see more frequent bills come to them. There could be an increase in cost in producing additional bills. Keep in mind that we also are trying to encourage residents to go on My Spring Water and get e-billing, so we don't have to incur additional costs for printing and such. So through that water and wastewater rate study, individuals are indicating that, you know, if I go out and read your meter today, and then I'm not reading your meter for another 3 months, if the leak happens tomorrow, essentially there's no indication, if they're not that familiar with the water meter, there's no indication to tell them that, oh, by the way, you have a leak in your house. Next thing that they get is 3 months later, they get a whopping bill and they go, what the, you know what, as to why is my bill so high? And so then now we're in a process where we have to go back, check the water meter, try to determine when the leak happened. So if we close down, if you will, the number, or we increase the frequency of when we're actually doing the water billings, the intent is hopefully to also assist residents in determining when leaks are happening more quickly. So with that, I'll pass things on to our Director of Public Works for any other comments.
Director?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Yeah, sure, just to touch on a couple of points with relation to the road occupancy permits and municipal consents and entrance permits. It's not a matter of this person completing them, it's a matter of this person inspecting them when they're completed, which is an activity we currently do not do. If we do happen to get a complaint or a question, typically the road supervisor would go out and take a look at it, but right now we don't make a point of specifically inspecting any of these things when they're complete. So I think on a go-forward basis, just to ensure for ourselves, we need somebody to go out and make sure that those things are done. With respect to the part-time patrolling in the winter, this person would be full-time, so I visioned them working a few day shifts and a few night shifts and then having some days off and then coming back on to a few day shifts, a few night shifts, and a few days off. So it would be a day and night shift for this person in the winter to be able to cover off the residential water meter reads and the final water meter reads during the day. And they can do the commercial water meter reads at night. In terms of the commercial grease trap inspections, right now we have a student do them in the summertime. So I would like to be able to do those at any time of the year to ensure compliance by our commercial users. And I think that's all that I could add.
Follow up?
Thank you very much, Director Coleman. I actually was going to make mention of the road supervisors. They're out and about on a pretty regular basis and would be in a position I would suggest to slide by a location and check on some of those as they have done in the past. I'm really struggling with the position doing the patroller's position and being expected to work days as well. I don't know if everybody knows my background, but I worked shift work for 32 years, and I can tell you it's a very difficult thing to do when you're expected to transition from days to nights on a regular basis. I think it might be better if this was, to be quite frank, a part-time position, which could provide you some assistance throughout the summer months to do some of these things, and also provide the ability to do a night shift in the winter to supplement and give us 7-day-a-week coverage with the regular patroller. So I still struggling with those two particular parts, as well as some of my other comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Did you have any other comments, Director Coleman, or will?
Thanks, Mayor Allen. I think the only thing that I could add is that our current patroller that works straight nights in the winter, he's full-time, So he works straight days in the summer and straight nights in the winter. He actually has requested more of a shift work where he gets some days and some nights. So this would provide an opportunity for him to have some days and some nights, and then the public works assistant to have some days and some nights.
Okay, final comment before we go to vote on this.
Yeah, just comment on that, actually a question through you, Mayor Allen, to Director Coleman. I'm just wondering if the schedule for the winter patroller was changed this year from what had happened in the past, which was rotating days off with the midnight shifts, or whether the position was changed to accommodate the particular employee so that the dates and hours changed. I just wanted to know what the answer was.
Director?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Councillor Cabral. Yes, the schedule did change this year. We've gone back to an 8-hour shift. This was not at the request of the current patroller. What we experienced is difficulty hiring a part-time patroller. So we have a previous employee who is available to work Friday night and Saturday night. So he used to come in and work Saturday and Sunday during the day. He has agreed to come in and work Friday night and Saturday night to patrol, to give the rest period to the current, to the full-time patroller, but this was not at the full-time patroller's request.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder that the program change Public Works Assistant be included for consideration in the final draft of the 220 budget. Councillor Chapman, Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Put that in. All those in favor?
Recorded vote, please.
A recorded vote was requested by Councillor Cabral. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Cabral?
No.
Councillor Hanna?
No.
Councillor Chapman?
Yes.
Councillor Moore?
No.
Councillor Ritchie?
No.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Yes?
Mayor Allen?
Yes.
The motion is lost.
So moving on to the outdoor maintenance worker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, I provided a high level of each of these, so if our manager of Parks and Facilities wanted to provide a little bit more information, or if council had questions, we can answer those at this time.
Director?
Okay, through you, Mayor Allen, to council.
Sorry, my mistake. Manager Anderson.
Again, through you, Mayor Allen, to council. If you could just bear with me on, I want to read this through so I can provide you with enough detail as possible. And then if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. So again, the first program change would be the outdoor maintenance worker, which council approved last year as a one-year interim position. This year, staff are recommending the current one-year contract outdoor maintenance worker be transitioned to a permanent full-time for 2020. This staff transition to permanent full-time will allow the Recreation Parks and Facilities Department to keep up with the maintenance requirements of the township's existing 100-plus park sites, sports fields, and help continue to increase efficiencies in parks operations by providing a higher standard of maintenance while allowing staff to be available during evening and weekend rentals to attend to issues or conflicts that arise with the paid users. With addition of the splash pad in Elmville, the one-year contract position that council approved in 2019 has greatly assisted with the maintenance and regulation requirements that this facility requires. Splash pad operations are from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily and require a staff member to inspect the water every 4 hours, clean and inspect the pad and park prior to opening and during operating hours. In addition, this position has assisted with the pressures of the spring and fall overlap in maintenance of sports fields and leaf debris cleanup of all park locations. Again, speaking on the 4-hour every 4-hour water inspections, this is demanded by the health unit. So during the winter months, this position will continue the responsibilities of plowing parking lots, maintaining walkways, entrances, and emergency exits to facility locations. Every spring, the existing 2 permanent full-time outdoor maintenance workers continue to assist Public Works with the winter sand cleanup of the sidewalks, boulevards, and intersections. This leaves all the spring maintenance of the sports fields up to our RPF foreman and having them ready for use by the end of April. Winter cleanup of the parks, walkways, and trails also does not commence until mid-April after the arena ice season has finished, which does not allow enough time to complete all winter cleanup required prior to having to start cutting the grass again at the over 100-plus sites that the township currently maintains. Similar for the fall, when the arena staff move back inside mid-August and the summer students finish the 3rd week of August, the 2 outdoor maintenance workers and parks foremen have to continue maintaining all the sites, plus the regular requirements of the sports fields. This has not allowed for all of the fall maintenance, aerating, top dressing, overseeding, and fertilizing of the sports fields to be completed, which is important to maintain strong, healthy turf in order to provide safe playing surfaces. So in 2019, only the top dressing of the Tree Nursery Sports Park playing fields was able to be completed.
Okay, questions, comments with respect to that? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I recall this position, 2 positions coming up last year during budget. And I recall also that they were moving to a different schedule. They also had, in similar nature, they had some additional things that they wanted to do. The key was at that time the splash pad and regulations regarding water quality, as Manager Anderson has alluded to, was important. I, for one, I think that this particular position, they'd asked for 2. This particular position, due to those particular items, I have to support it. And I think it should be a transition from a contract position to a full-time position.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To Manager Anderson, I didn't see in the package where you were looking for qualifications. So for $74,000, I'd like to know what the person can do, what their qualifications are. Thanks.
Manager Anderson?
Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Moore. So obviously grade 12 education. They have to have knowledge of parks operations and preferably experience. So parks ops, grass cutting, playground maintenance, sports field maintenance, equipment maintenance such as mowers, tractors, and operation of trucks and plows for the winter months. So they'll have to have experience in the winter months with snow removal and exterior facility maintenance, so salting walkways and such. And again, they just a proven knowledge of overall experience within winter and summer operations.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. And Brian, I want to clear, Brian, I'm sorry, Manager Anderson. You've taken on a challenging time at this time of year doing budget and so on, so I just wanted to say I recognize that. I'm looking at your program change number 2, taking on the position that was a contract to full-time. I agree that that appears to be a necessary thing. But the way you explained it, that position in the wintertime, because it's no longer doing the splash pad, and not sure what that person does when it's not doing the splash pad every 4 hours, but in the wintertime, that person is going to be doing plowing and that type of maintenance. So it made it more difficult to understand why the new permanent position, full-time position was necessary when you explained that person was going to be doing plowing. So it sounds like coming in the wintertime, you have an extra person to be doing the plowing because the person's not doing the splash pad. Does that make sense? Do you understand my position? Thank you.
Just before, Councillor Hannah, it's Ryan, it's not Brian, okay?
My apologies, Ryan.
Manager Anderson.
Yes, through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Hannah. So the first position was created obviously for the parking lots for snow removal at various locations, pump houses, facilities, and such. The second position will take on the responsibilities of the additional sidewalks that the township has taken on over the years, which in turn is approximately 12 kilometers. So 11,565 meters of sidewalk. Currently, we're having challenges with the 3 existing staff being able to maintain the minimum maintenance standards, and we're working towards improving that. So again, that person will help in that matter in the winter months.
Councillor Ritchie, did you have your hand up?
Mayor Allen, I did have my hand. Thank you for asking me. I want to, and this is to you, Mayor Allen, like I came forward here a week ago with a notice of motion about bringing, voting on an efficiency audit regarding all these hires. So we're going to move forward and hire all these people, then we're going to go back and talk about the efficiency audit. Like, I see there's money available from the government, which their CEO talked about, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. So, Mayor Allen, where are you with this?
Councillor, the motion that you had was withdrawn with respect to the new hirings. I have it in front of me here. And it was part of the efficiency study that's going to be done in the next, in 220, that is included in the budget. So we discussed that, and as a result of that, you withdrew the motion. And as to where I'm at, I look forward to the efficiency study because I'm always interested in trying to maximize efficiencies. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Couple of questions. One actually through you to CEO Schmidt. The $74,000, that's the full benefit package and wage, right?
Correct.
Okay. The second question I would like to direct back to Manager Ryan is in respect of the position, the person who's currently under contract. Is that particular individual been working for the township in another capacity prior to, so they would have knowledge of a lot of the things that they would be required to do? Would that be fair to say?
CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the individual that's currently filling the contract has been with the township in another capacity for, I can't tell you how many years, but has definitely vast experience with the township.
Okay. Question?
Yes, the second question is in respect of the 12K of sidewalks, which also received that earlier on. I forget the year that's from, but I believe it was 2015. And with respect to the year that it's from, from 2015, I believe it was 1 or 2 years ago that we got someone else to undertake sidewalk clearing, and if I'm not mistaken, we purchased another sidewalk machine specifically for that. So we have 3 sidewalk machines now and 3 operators in the wintertime the last 2 years.
CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't speak to the number of pieces of equipment we have. I'll have to defer that to the manager, but you are correct, Councillor Cabral. In 2018, we council did approve an outdoor maintenance worker, so in addition to the staff complement. And I believe you're right that an additional sidewalk plow was purchased in 2018. How many pieces of equipment have that? I'm not 100% sure about. So.
Yep. Follow on.
Is it 3 machines? Can we find out?
Yes, it's 3 machines, and we have kept one for backup.
Thank you. The next point is, I think we're kind of sliding between 2 different positions here. I think the one that was originally up was the contract position, the full-time. And I just want to say that when we look back at last year's budget, they were requesting 2 people to basically accomplish these similar tasks. One of the things that came about of it was the purchase of a plow and a sander for use of the patroller, and that the other full-time person that we had last year hired on contract also assisted with the snow removal, and that alleviated the work from the facilities, the guy who fixes the stuff, so that he would no longer have to do it. And it also relieved some pressure on the patrol themselves. Unless heavy snowfall came, then we had actually 3 people that were able to do some snow plowing. So I just want to make sure that my frame of reference is we're on the contract position going full-time. That contract position did do that work last year, correct?
CAO through,
Yes, through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral. So that position just started in May, if that's what you're referring to. So they haven't seen through a winter months. Our current building maintenance position was intended to stay on and do facility snow removal and maintenance. And this outdoor maintenance position, in turn, would assist with that. And I wasn't part of the other kind of discussions, but I know that it would relieve some pressure on the patroller at that point.
okay. So the next motion we have with respect to this, I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Cabral, Councillor Chapman, that the program change outdoor maintenance worker convert contract to permanent full-time be included for consideration in the final draft of the 220 budget. Those in favor?
Recorded vote, please, unless we're all in favor, obviously. I saw a lot of hands go up, but we'll have to have a
Are you
recorded
calling
vote.
for recorded vote?
Yes, I did. I'm sorry, Mayor Allen. Tried to get ahead of you.
A recorded vote was requested by Councillor Cabral. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Cabral?
Yes.
Councillor Hanna?
Yes.
Councillor Chapman?
Yes.
Councillor Moore?
No.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Yes?
And Mayor Allen.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Okay. Next, we're moving to the outdoor maintenance worker, new permanent full-time.
So,
CEO.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, sorry, just, I believe I misspoke earlier regarding this. I believe I mentioned that the 49,000 was for 10 months. It's actually for 8 months, so my apologies on that. Again, this is a brand-new position that's being sought for 2020, and if our manager wants to speak further to it, by all means.
Yes, Manager Anderson.
Okay, through you, Mayor Allen, to council. Again, just bear with me. I'd like to provide you with enough detail to make some decisions and allow me to answer any questions after. So in 2019, RPF's delivery of the summer services transitioned from the current Monday to Friday maintenance and service delivery model to a 7-day per week, 2 shifts per day. There's been significant increase in the use of the township's playing fields and outdoor facilities over the past number of years, which has led to extended work days to complete additional maintenance requirements, such as additional infield dragging between daytime and evening rentals. Winter maintenance has also increased as additional sidewalks have been assumed by the township in 2019, with more to be added in 2020. This new outdoor maintenance worker will be plowing, sanding sidewalks to ensure our minimum maintenance standards and MTO regulations are being met. In 220, maintenance requirements will increase drastically with the 2 community parks being added. So there's a park in Stone Manor and Cameron Estates as well. There's 2 brand new baseball diamonds at Tree Nursery Sports Park, and the grass area, which is minimal at the Midhurst Pavilion rink. So speaking on some programs that kind of take place in our communities, pickleball has become a popular sport in the township and is evolving quickly in our communities on concrete sports pads. Annually, our staff is required to paint the pickleball courts on 6 concrete sports pads. Staff are also required to perform frequent inspections of cleaning of the sports pads to ensure they are free of debris, water, and ready for these groups to participate. This is not currently being met due to the lack of staff resources. The additional proposed outdoor maintenance worker would greatly assist in ensuring that these requirements are being met. Currently, the majority of the RPF maintenance staff time is directed to daily maintenance of ball diamonds, grass cutting, and trimming of sites from May to October, which does not leave time for other maintenance requirements such as tree limbing, pruning, painting of gates, signposts, trail maintenance, as well as extra garbage debris cleanup at remote sites. This position will allow RPF department to attend to these tasks more frequently. This position is required to meet the department's increased maintenance requirements year-round by providing enough resources to continue the 7-day-a-week operation, 2 shifts per day. In the summer months, the additional resources to provide the required maintenance during the overlap spring and fall periods and the winter snow removal at the township facilities and sidewalks. No additional vehicles or equipment will be required with the proposed staff and service delivery model.
Okay, open it up to questions, discussion. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To Manager Anderson, and I hope you don't think I'm being hard-nosed. The vagueness with some of these positions and the overlap of some of the duties, I really struggle with between Parks and Rec and Public Works, unfortunately, because I don't see a real line in the sand. So I'm struggling with all these positions just because of that this year, that I just don't, I need some really good concrete data, and I need to know why the positions and not just throwing some seed out or cleaning some snow. Like, I just need a bit more information. Sorry.
CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I guess just to, at a very high level, I guess, simplify things if I can. So from an outdoor maintenance worker perspective, you're looking at, in the summertime, essentially looking after all of our parks and sports fields, which sports fields you may go, well, yeah, that's not much to deal with, but sports fields actually takes quite a bit of our time, and to provide the level of service that we're providing to our residents. Should council wish not to continue that, then by all means, but we do provide a pretty high level of service as it relates to our sports fields, and the requirements that our staff are undertaking to make sure that our sports fields are premier sports fields in the area, if you are pretty substantial. In the wintertime, essentially, as Manager Anderson mentioned, they're either plowing parking lots for all of our facilities, and or they're doing sidewalk snow plowing in all of our communities. One other thing that wasn't mentioned in the justification that just kind of popped in my head here is the additional in-kind services that are being requested by our staff, specifically Parks and Rec, as well as our Public Works area. There's a substantial amount of in-kind services that we provide to different players within the community, whether it be different fairs, special events, some of the events that have happened recently, as well as recently and this is how it kind of popped into my head, is we've been asked by the BIA to install banners in the Elmville downtown area, which isn't something that we do on an annual basis. We're being requested to do more of, and of course we're trying to accommodate as best we can. So the asks keep coming, and the resources don't keep coming, if you know what I mean. So we are trying to be a community player, but there is a point in time where we're going to have to say, listen, we can't do it anymore with the resources that we have. So I don't want to have that conversation with council, to be honest with you, because I know probably where that's going to go. But at the end of the day, we are trying to make sure that we accommodate everybody within the township as best we can, and that's part of it, and apologize it wasn't part of the program change information, but it is something that definitely needs to be spoken to, is we are constantly being pulled in many different directions to assist, whether it be CP Holiday Train, for example, the amount of work that goes behind the scenes on that, you'd be somewhat surprised at the number of resources that are pulled off of doing, whether it be sidewalk, snow plowing, whether it be outdoor maintenance of other parks, facilities. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and you know, staff is getting to the point where it's getting to be a little too much for them, so I just throw that out for council's consideration.
Just a question before I go on. The library movement of books and interlibrary, is that covered by one of these positions, or and has that increased because of what the provincial government did with respect to the interlibrary transfers?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Recreation Parks and Facilities Department does currently help the library with those interlibrary loans, if you will. They're not taking care of all of them. You'll see them in the credit card statements when they come, to be honest with you. They are still going through a third party, a lot of those. But yes, the parks and facilities for the most part do book runs, I guess is what they refer them to, for our library right now.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. I just follow up on Councillor Moore's question about the lines getting blurred between Parks and Rec plowing sidewalks versus Works Department. That is an area that has confused me over the years, the same as why we don't outsource and have somebody plow the sidewalks for us. And I know when it's been done in the past, they say it's more expensive to do it that way, but yet other municipalities seem to do it that way. Just an observation.
CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of those topics that we have a discussion about as to whether on a go-forward basis, can we continue to do it internally, or do we need to assist with outside contractors? As you may be aware, we are struggling, most municipalities are struggling to find qualified drivers right now. It's difficult to find somebody with the qualifications to snowplow, so you know, it is something that we'll have to consider as to it does contracted services, some kind of a hybrid system make sense? I don't know what the answer is until we've conducted that full analysis, but something that definitely we need to take a look at as we continue to bring on more infrastructure. So,
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I have to agree with Councillor Moore. Part of my problem with some of these program changes is there's no basis of measurement as far as what we currently do and what else has come on board that would provide us a meaningful way to say we have these new facilities, we want to be able to provide people the opportunity to utilize them, we want to maintain them, but we don't have any bar or any measurement or any standard to gauge when the ask comes up. And the problem I have is it's the word increase. We have increased this and increased that, and it's not able to be, I guess, put into perspective as far as we can tell just from using that, when you could have some numbers and some real hard data to support those terms. So simply using the term increase fails to provide, you know, meaningful context, I guess is what I'm looking for. Last year, splash pads certainly put a wrench into things because it was legislated that needed to be tested every 4 hours, and we were going to be opening it up on the weekends. It also provided that recs and parks and facilities would be in a position to run their shifts and also provide weekend coverage. But the suggestion that increased maintenance, increased use during the pickleball, as well as increased use of sports fields does not equate to immediate addition of staff. The level and quality of our facilities, their hours of availability for use, and the level of maintenance provided must be balanced between what we as a township are able to provide as measured against what our tax-paying residents would reasonably expect to fund. So maybe we do have to say no every once in a while, at least until we're in a position to say we definitely need to go there. And I also have to agree with Councillor Ritchie that maybe we should be in a position in the very, very near future to do some kind of an assessment and look at these things. And I would suggest to staff that certainly during budget time, for me, at least, I would hope other councillors would feel the same way, that if we had some kind of numbers to attach these asks to, it would make life a lot easier to understand why they're needed and what use they're going to be put to. The staff increase from last year's budget, the contract position, to the winter operations plow and salter, that particular aspect of it has yet to be realized because we didn't do it last year. That particular kind of a model, per se, won't be realized until this upcoming winter. So it seems to me that it's kind of a retake on what we were asked for last year, and I don't feel that the justification is there. Maybe possibly next year, when it comes around again, I could certainly see us moving forward on it, but I would certainly like to see this model move forward this year, since we've already agreed that the contract position will be full-time. So those are the comments I'd like to make on this.
Thank you. CAO?
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Cabral and the rest of council. So again, I think the idea too, is, and your comments are well taken. I think the idea is for this brand-new position, we continually, we'll see new development happening, new sidewalks happening in Stone Manor and likely in Cameron Estates. We will also see, obviously, bringing on the new community park within Stone Manor, which I have no idea the size of that facility, but it's not small. And hence, there is that added facility that's going to be brought on. There's a sports pad there that's going to be brought on in line as well, in addition to the Cameron Estates property that we're going to have to maintain. I'm not the best to speak to on a daily basis what the staff do. Mr. Manager Anderson may be in a better position. I think some of the other things that have to be taken into consideration is the amount of time that staff actually, it takes them to load things and go from the depot where they essentially, or the yard where they essentially start their day, to where they have to take the equipment. Because, for example, in Stone Manor Woods, we had this discussion the other day. Essentially, we have an individual that takes a sidewalk snowplow from Elmvale, drives it to the Stone Manor Woods subdivision, has to unload that sidewalk snowplow. I don't know how long that takes. And then essentially does his route, or does their route, sorry. Also has to go back to the yard in Midhurst to pick up sand because he doesn't have enough sand to put in his piece of equipment, and then has to go back to the site, fill up the sidewalk snowplow, complete the rest of his route to the extent he can, and then has to load everything up at the end of the day and truck everything back to the yard. So again, efficient, probably not the most. Reality, yeah, that's what's happening right now, unfortunately. And that's only one example. You know, we have that with in the summertime with our lawnmowers as well, right? We go out, we have to load these lawnmowers. You have to have, I don't know how many staff, minimum on a staff. I guess you have a vehicle that has to be driven in a trailer, so you're minimum 2 staff. You know, and again, same routine. You load, you unload, you do the work, you load, you come back. That's the process. So again, we add more additional facilities to these staff. It just adds more time in the day to try to get these things done. So to your point, we may have to say no, and we may have to reduce some of our levels of service because we might not be able to continue to provide them at that level.
Let me just give any other, do you have Councillor Moore, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To that, CAO Schmidt, I really look forward to the efficiency study. Secondly, though, I want to back up to the library and Parks and Rec delivering books or picking up books for the library. When Souls initiated that or sort of downloaded that expense to the libraries, they are expecting to pay for those pickups and deliveries, although it hurts. They know that it's there, and you know, we're all sitting around the board table wondering what those costs are going to look like. I have to question why a Parks and Rec employee is taking the time, and they are so understaffed, why they would be taking the time to do that. Thank you.
CEO?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Moore. So it's the building maintenance staff that form part of the recreation parks and facilities, whereby they're going out to the different facilities already. And so if they're moving from Elmville to a site in potentially Midhurst and or Minising, they're taking the books at that time. Again, trying to be efficient in that regards, trying to help the library. And I don't believe it's the interloan that's actually they're looking after. The interloan are going from different libraries outside of the community, not within the community. My understanding is what they're using, what the library is utilizing is the services whereby books are being shared amongst our three library facilities. So if there's books that are being requested from Elmville or from Midhurst that are in Elmville, then if the building maintenance facility attendant is in Elmville, they drop by the library, pick up the books and take them to Midhurst on their kind of run to that facility. So again, that's not their only job. They're trying to, if they're in the area, they try to pick up the books or the documentation or whatever they need to pick up, and then drop it off at their next location. So that's kind of my understanding of the process. So,
Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I did ask CEO Smith about a few things. As you noticed that we got the email about the outdoor maintenance workers. So if we hired the fifth person, 3, 4, 5, yeah. Because this year we spent almost $18,000 in overtime. So hiring a new outdoor maintenance worker to be the fifth one will alleviate most of that overtime. Plus, I, as a recreation person, don't need numbers to know what they do because A, we increased almost 12,000 meters of sidewalk, additional parkland, plus the 2 new diamonds in Tree Nursery, which will be a handful. And I do get asked quite often, why isn't the grass cut Diamond 4, or why isn't the sidewalks plowed, or the Minising Hall shoveled? So I agree on a new outdoor worker.
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you. It was follow-up. Just with respect to what Manager Anderson had said about moving trying to move something to the south and keeping it in Yard 2. I mean, I was sitting here thinking that made all the sense in the world, but I also understand that that wasn't a possibility prior to the expansion over there. But it certainly makes sense now. And I just wanted to speak to the aspect of benchmarks. The Parks and Recreation staff, as well as the Public Works staff that are out on the road, do timesheets, which really does kind of provide some insight as to how their time is spent and what they are doing. And maybe as a suggestion, certainly it would be useful for me, I would hope for other councillors as well. That's the kind of data that would be very useful in showing the increase, showing that, additional people, are required, because that data kind of already exists. So it'd be nice to kind of have access to it.
Okay. Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, just listening to everybody around the table here, I can't help but think, looking down the road a year or 2 years, how important it is for this property that we've been working with, the Hasty Track, to get it completed and get it started for with a fire hall. It would, if it was there, it would help the whole business of operations run a lot smoother. Not just for the fire hall, but for the Parks and Rec Department in order to be over there. And I spoke about that in our second term in order to get that addition on there, at least for now for the fire department. But when they're moved over to their new facility for the Parks and Rec, where somebody from down here, instead of loading it up, and you're right, it takes time. And, but tie everything down, get it out there. In the meantime, is there anything we could do to have something here? We put a shed up over there, so I'm just throwing that out there. Is there, maybe it's already been talked about or whatever, I don't know, but I'm just mentioning that.
Manager Anderson, Go ahead, please.
Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Ritchie. So currently, we do station a student out of here now. So that's Monday to Friday. We have looked at the options of starting staff out of here, but there's logistic issues and supervisory issues with that because of the limitations that we do have within our department on that level. So again, these are discussions that have been taking place between Ron, our previous director, myself, and our RPF foreman. But kind of on speaking on that, I'm going to kind of take it to a different level and address council. You guys obviously don't work within our departments. I take on a lot of extra responsibility that you guys probably aren't even aware of. I go on the weekends, I go after hours, I clean facilities. I've came to the arena to do ice maintenance when staff call in sick. So I'm challenged in the fact that I can't get you guys enough information to provide justification on these new hires, on new equipment. And that's why I just need you guys to understand where I'm at on that, and I'm being realistic on this. I'm going to point out some issues that have happened over the past year. We have contract cleaners at our facilities. Councillor Mott Chapman can vouch for this. We have cleaners that call in sick. I don't have any available staff because they're either on a day shift and they've worked enough hours, I can't get them in. I have staff rotating at the arena, I can't get them in. So I'm the guy that goes in. I don't incur any other costs on the township. Very rarely do I put in lieu time for that. And so you guys aren't seeing those hard costs. And, you know, there's a lot of pressures that come with that. There's burnout amongst staff. Some of my staff don't even know I do this stuff. I do it honestly because it needs done. And hopefully getting more staff on board and being able to provide these justifications and business plans to you guys so that we're not sitting here having these conversations. You guys can make easy decisions. Will be smart planning for the township in the future. And in my opinion, adding staff gradually to our growth is smart planning.
Thank you for those comments, Manager. Appreciate it. I'll go to Councillor Hanna first, then Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you. Just while we're on the subject of the library, I didn't get your attention. I just wanted to let you know that I heard from the Simcoe County last week that when they're delivering books for the county to our libraries, they also do winter transfer of books for Springwater Township Library as well.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you, I was trying to pull up a presentation that we did at the Parks and Recreation Forum back in March of this year. And I had great information about how many properties we have, how many people are doing it, but I will definitely share with council that during this presentation, when we outlined the square kilometers of our municipality, how many facilities we have, how many parks, indoor, outdoor, everything that we manage, and then I outlined how many staff we have. This forum is for Parks and Recreation staff across Ontario. They were calling me out. They're like, no, there's no way. There's no way Springwater gets that done with that many people. I will tell you that I see it. I see our managers. I see them in the washrooms changing garbages. I see them out with rakes and lining diamonds for us. I get that. I agree with burnout. There isn't the amount of lieu time that could potentially be there. I think that and I commend staff for creating a culture where people want to work. So we do. There are staff that go so far and above and beyond what they're doing. So maybe we don't see some of the pressures on paper, but in the community, we can see them. And if that continues to happen, Oro-Medante's not far, Clearview's not far, we're going to start losing staff because it may not be required. They feel a sense of, you know, we have our planning department working with our building department, everybody's working together to get this done because we are short-staffed. That is a fact. And we need to start putting the staff in place at the right times, and I agree that we need to build for the future. And I'm looking forward to that efficiencies audit, but at this time, I myself can see it. I mean, before we had a female in at the arena, during our festivals, I was the one running into the washroom to change the toilet paper because there's such a long lineup and nothing in there because we couldn't get into the ladies' facility. So we all work together, and I can see that. But we need to, yes, I'm sure, you know what, if we don't approve this, there's no doubt in my mind, it will get done because we have incredible employees. But we need to support those employees by not only showing them that we get what they do, but by increasing the amount of people that we have because we are growing. We keep adding parks and we keep adding sidewalks and we keep adding responsibilities, but we haven't been continuing to add people to our workforce. So when it comes to Parks and Rec, as everybody knows, it's a passion of mine, and extremely excited to see what our new director feels about this. I know that there has been a lot of discussion back and forth, but we need to keep up. I mean, or stop building parks and tear down baseball diamonds instead of building them up, because if we don't have the people to maintain them, I think that it's the staff that makes Springwater incredible. And if we don't continue to put those staff in places, our facilities are not going to be maintained, and we're not going to be able to offer our residents what we currently do.
Thank you. I also support these. I support all of these actually, because I know the process that we go through in the budgeting process. That it's subject to challenge. It's subject to cutback. It's subject to just basically paring it back to the bare necessities. And keep reminding ourselves, folks, that we're not a unionized organization, and many other municipalities are, and that opens a whole new ballgame with respect to what's being referred to here about the extra mile that the staff consistently go to. That wouldn't happen. So we really have to do, I think, a bit of a reality check and realize that historically we have had low numbers of staff compared to the size and the growth that we've had, and that continues, and the growth is going to increase. And so we have to work smart to scale up appropriately in our different departments, and not, we need to act instead of react. So I'll be supportive of this. Okay, I need a mover and a seconder regarding this, that the program change outdoor maintenance worker, new permanent full-time be included for consideration in the final draft of the 220 budget. Mover and seconder, Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin. All those in favor? Opposed? Would you like me to reread the motion? Okay, that the program change outdoor maintenance worker, new permanent full-time be included for consideration in the final draft of the 220 budget. In other words, we're going through each of these, and we know which one we're at now. Yeah. So we're voting on that. So again, I'll say all those in favor. 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 1, 2, 3. That's carried. Thank you. Next, we have park maintenance casual attendance. CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, just at a very high level, what's being proposed here is to essentially remove 2 of our summer student positions and replace those with two park maintenance casual attendants. Essentially, the park maintenance casual attendants would be on staff for 28 weeks, I believe is what we had suggested, as opposed to the 18 weeks that the students are currently here. And in the program change, the gross expenses are related to the park maintenance casuals. The revenues are related to the savings are related to the reduction in the 2 student positions. So, and a net impact of just over $40,000 for this. So with that, I will pass things over to Manager Anderson to speak to.
And just before we do that, so these are described on tab 8, page 6, 7, 8, and 9, is that correct?
10 and 11, yep.
10 and 11. Okay, thank you. Manager Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Again, I'm going to go through this in detail. So this program change purpose was to replace the 2 park students with 2 casual park maintenance. If approved, this would reduce the student complement from 6 to 4. Over the years, the Recreation Parks and Facilities Department has assumed more parks, green space, trails, and programs, our playgrounds, obviously, as I've been letting you guys know. The current student model is no longer appropriate due to the increased maintenance and the complexity of jobs requiring the students to operate truck and trailer combinations, including expensive lawn maintenance equipment. So again, that speaks to all your questions about what experience do our staff have. We're putting students in place to operate thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment with little experience. We provide them with enough training to feel comfortable to deploy them, but the responsibility level is huge on those students. By replacing the 2 students' positions with 2 casual maintenance positions, will allow the RPF department to establish north and south crews, which the 4 remaining students will be divided amongst and work under a responsible, experienced staff member. This will increase efficiencies within the areas of grass cutting, parks, walkways, and playground maintenance requirements. I'll speak to grass crews on that. So they're not only required to cut grass, they're required to do litter pickup, garbage removal, walkways. So we have numerous walkways through the township. I think we're in and around 15 to 20 different walkways through our communities. So it's, attending to those sites more frequently would help. In saying that, students typically start the 2nd week of May and are finished by the 3rd week of August. Park season is in operations from April until November, basically from the time the snow leaves till the time the snow drops. The transition from 2 student positions to parks maintenance casuals will benefit parks operations through the months of April, remainder of August, and continue on until November. The department will be able to accomplish more and become more efficient in their operations. The overlap of the outdoor facility operations, so parks, and the arena operations, which occurs mid-March to the end of April and mid-August until the end of October, is a challenging time because the arena operations requires 3 recreation assistants and the casual arena, so that takes 4 staff out of parks operations. And in saying that, we still have ball diamonds to maintain, we still have soccer pitches to maintain, playgrounds are still in full bore, and grass cutting does not stop. It actually increases in the fall season, and it does not leave us with enough time to maintain equipment properly. And again, we don't take into account enough that staff do call in sick. Staff do have vacation and lieu time that they that we have to manage, and with the students leaving in August, we are extremely stretched. And speaking on the student aspect of things, it's becoming more challenging with students to get them, I guess, to have them committed as much as they have in the past. They ask for excessive amounts of time off. Through the hiring process, we go through the whole spiel of, do you need any time off, so that we know that they can be committed to us over the summer months. The question is, no, I don't. So you're willing to work 7 days a week, rotating shifts if possible? Yes, we are. Then when push comes to shove, oh, I have to go on this vacation with my parents. I'm not feeling well. We've had a student off for up to 2 weeks this past year, just said they had health issues. Last year, it was almost a month where a student was back and forth to work. So efficiencies, nothing was getting done. except for the full-time guys who step up to the plate continuously, myself, deploying staff from facilities to assist, and then me going after hours or on weekends to jump in to the mix. And I think fire, I think anybody from the admin can vouch for this, the libraries. I'm the forefront of our department, and I'm getting tired.
Okay, thank you. Comments, questions? Okay, let's get a mover and a seconder to get this program changed. Are you moving? No, I have comments. Okay, just want to get a mover and a seconder, and then we'll discuss it. Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman, Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and certainly not to diminish anything that Manager Anderson has spoke to, but my concern wasn't with respect to the positions, but was with respect to not being able to provide some meaningful employment to students. It sounds like obviously we've had better experiences in the past, but I do like to see Springwater Township provide meaningful employment opportunities to our youth. And I know that there's some issues here that make it difficult to do so. But part of the positive side for students is that we wouldn't be able to utilize for casual staff would be if there are any programs or grant monies available for student employment, that we could certainly minimize our costs by utilizing those grants, which we won't be able to utilize with casual staff. It'd be nice to know whether returning students, were in a position to, kind of like move up the ladder to maybe lawn maintenance equipment that they might have a better understanding of. And I guess that was my main concern, and I thought maybe a potential way to assist Parks and Rec and still maintain students in there would be to see if there might be Georgian College students for these two identified positions that might live right locally in Springwater and be able to provide additional time, even during school hours. Anyway, those are my comments, but I certainly understand Manager Anderson's concerns with poor experiences with students this past year.
CAO Schmidt, any comment or follow-up, or through you to
Yeah,
to
thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I just want to comment further on Councillor Cabral's comments there. Him and I actually had a discussion offline, and I believe Councillor Moore actually brought this up, I believe, through a budget discussion last year regarding partnering with, whether it be Georgian College or even EDHS, on apprenticeship programs and or co-op type programs. So obviously I haven't had the opportunity yet to reach out and make those connections, but it is something that we are going to look towards, obviously through our partnership with EDHS. We'll see what kind of conversations we can have with them to see what kind of programs we might be able to set up to assist students locally, as well as to the extent that Georgian College might be able to partake in that as well, and any other institutions in the area that we might be able to reach out to. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Any comments over here? Comments here? Okay, the motion reads that the program change park maintenance casual attendance to be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2020 budget. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, the next one is SSEA, CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr.
Am
Mayor.
I
So-
correct in saying, sorry to interrupt, you had reached out to get more information, we haven't had a response?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, go ahead.
You
That's
just
it.
took- you-
That's all
you
she
took my
wrote?
thunder.
Okay, comments with respect to this? No comments?
So I have one more slide, actually, Mr. Mayor.
Uh,
So the last slide that I wanted to provide here, and this was by no means planned, but what I had done is prepared the impact for an average residential property based on the decisions that council had made prior to tonight. So meaning that as it relates to the program changes, we did remove the two library program changes. So These numbers here that you're seeing on this slide would assume approval of all of the other program changes. So I realized the Public Works Assistant Council did not approve this evening, so although that doesn't have a tax impact here, so these numbers shouldn't change. But essentially, it includes the 2 outdoor maintenance workers, it includes the park maintenance casual attendants, and it includes the SSEA. So the SSEA is obviously still something that needs to be considered. But essentially, if we were to move forward, or council was to move forward with this, essentially you're looking at, from a township perspective, just over a $10 increase, or a 0.62% increase on the township side. The county, again, is a 2% increase, equates to just under $27. Education remains the same. Essentially, you're looking at a $37 increase, or a 0.98%, but then when we take into account the policing charge, it drops the blended rate to a 0.92%, or just over just under $37 for an average home assessed at $478,000. So, just wanted to share that with council.
Okay, any questions, comments with respect to this? Okay, so we'll recess at this point to resume, yes, Councillor Cabral.
I would appreciate if we were able to move forward with my 2 motions. I have put them off twice. I don't think it will take very long, maybe 5 minutes at most. I don't expect it would take long. I would appreciate it. I was assured I'd be able to move
You know,
forward
but
with
then-
them.
Yeah, but then we were dealing with the,
Yes, I was assured that that would happen this evening, however, Mayor
No, I
Allen.
couldn't. No.
So I would appreciate to move forward on my 2 motions as I originally asked. I was assured it would happen this evening.
yes, but then we looked at the schedule, and we're going to be talking about the other things in the next meeting, so.
Mayor Allen,
I-
some members of council won't be here at the next meeting, and I think, to be fully frank, that I was assured earlier on that the motion would be permitted to go forward, or I would have made them at that time. On 2 separate occasions, I asked to go forward, and I was assured I'd be able to make them. I would ask that council support me moving forward with my 2 motions, and as I say, I don't expect it'll take long. I think probably council is either going to say yes or no.
Okay, does council want to move forward and deal with these tonight? Yeah. Yes?
I'll support going forward, but I have the hall board election to be running and they're waiting for me. So if we could move forward quickly, I'd appreciate it.
And I'm getting hungry.
All right, Councillor Cabral, go ahead with the motions.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The first one I made earlier on, I think it's already on record. Whereas the June 19th, 2019 regular meeting, council requested an item for future consideration for information for the purchase of a projector to be used for community events. And whereas at the October 2nd, 2019 regular meeting, council received an information report regarding purchase options for a community projector and suggested accessories. Be it therefore resolved that $7,500 for the purchase of a community projector and accessories be included in the final draft of the 2020 budget, funds to come from the modernization funds.
And a seconder, I believe Clerk Chaperon is saying these have to be split into 2. Go ahead, Clerk Chaperon.
Thank you. Just as there are 2 separate motions, we have to deal with one first, dispose of it, and then
this
the
is the
second
one.
one. Yes.
Okay, a seconder for that? Councillor Chapman? Discussions with respect to that. So it's $7,500 plus other and accessories to be included. So the $7,500 covers all the costs of this, Councillor Cabral?
Yes, Mayor Allen, if I might just briefly, if you recall, we talked about this. It went forward as an item for consideration. It was for a projector to be used at various community events that would be suitable for outdoors. That particular figure was the maximum for the projector that wasn't recommended, I might add. However, there was accessories that were suggested, so I'm asking to maintain the figure of $7,500 to include all of those accessories.
And Councillor Cabral, remind me how this would be moved around the township and for use?
Information at the time was it would be made available through the administration office. So if a particular ward was having an event, some of the things we talked about was the Raptors game. It could be a New Year's Eve levy where you wanted to project or show something at that particular event. This projector would be suitable for that.
So it would be pulled on a trailer or loaded into a truck? Or?
No, small enough to, put in a suitcase. Yeah.
I've seen these.
I
in
would
Europe,
suggest
you have
that
these traveling billboards.
I
That's
would
what I'm wondering if
suggest
you're
that
talking about.
it wouldn't be any larger than,
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. Deputy Mayor Conlon.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you to Councillor Cabral. Understanding that there is a deficit showing for our modernization funding, we've over allocated 132,000 already. So I'm curious if we can add this to those slides so that at our next meeting we can go through them and make a fulsome decision so that it's included in the discussion with other members of council's requests.
Well, that's what I was getting at earlier, is to do that. So, Councillor Cabral, would you be willing to add that to the modernization funding?
I'm just wanted it to move forward for consideration in the budget. Where the funding actually comes from, that will be open for debate again, I would think.
So the motion looks to just move it to the next step, not final approval of it?
No, this is not final approval. I thought the aspect is to move things forward for budget approval to the draft budget for final approval later on.
All right. Okay.
Well, if you want to approve it now, that's entirely up to council.
No. Okay. The way the motion reads is that it's included in the final draft of the 2020 budget. CEO Schmidt.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess the intent could be is that we add it to that list for
Yes.
council's consideration when we talk about the modernization
Okay.
funds.
That's fine.
Everybody
Councillor
clear on
Cabral's
that then?
good with that.
All those in favor? Carried. Next, Councillor Cabral.
The second motion is a little bit different. It may even come across as being a bit unique. That a budget per ward be created to provide each respective ward councillor access to discretionary funds for use within their respective wards for specialized purchases, services, events, and other worthwhile causes, which in their opinion would be meaningful and worthwhile to their community and its residents. And further, that a policy be developed to provide guidelines to identify items to which these funds may not be directed. And further, that an amount of $7,500 per ward be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2020 budget. But once again, this is just to move it to the next level. Thanks, Renee.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Hannah. Discussion. So you're proposing a discretionary fund for each ward.
Do you want me to speak to it a bit?
And my immediate question is, so what happens if the deputy mayor and mayor don't have a ward that they're related to? What happens in that?
Well, I could suggest that your comments and your suggestions would certainly be worthwhile if you notice something in a particular ward that you wanted to move forward. It's just that we're finding sometimes we're here talking about trying to get $1,500 or $2,000 for something, quite often for a particular ward. And this would make it a little bit easier for some of those items that a ward member might recognize as being needed, have those discretionary funds available so that they would be able to do it. It could be as simple as a ward wants to put together a community garden and they need some funds to get that started. They might be able to utilize some funds from this particular fund. So that's the idea before it. I would even go forward to say that if a ward did not use the $7,500 and only used a portion thereof, that the balance would carry over from year to year.
Okay. CEO Schmidt, do you have any comments with respect to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So council may or may not be aware that there are discretionary funds within the council budget right now, not $7,500 per ward. There's essentially $500 set aside for each member of council to use for discretionary purposes. I would have some concerns over $7,500 per ward and how those funds would be allocated, understanding that members of council as a whole should be approving the expenditure of funds, not one member of council in one ward. Unfortunately, that's kind of the system that we have. So any dollars being spent in a ward should be coming to this council for approval in my mind, but that's, and based on our procurement policy, so that's just my position, but.
Comments? No, let me just see whether there are other comments. Yes, Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So in principle, I don't mind the idea. I think I like it. But again, you would have to have a really good policy in place around what expenditures you could have related to the money, as well as I do think the final authorization would still come to council. So even if you did want to spend $3,000 on something, I think as a group we would still have to vote on whether or not it was a good use of the money. Would you agree?
That's kind of like, thank you, Mayor Allen. That's kind of what the policy aspect was. I mean, it didn't have to be a policy that we would simply adhere to, but it certainly could be something that we could bring before council. Just would make it a lot easier if council was aware where the money was being spent, but there wouldn't have to be necessarily a larger debate. As long as it made sense, I think we could all agree that maybe it should move forward. And to be quite honest with you, I picked $7,500. But it could be a number less than that, but something significant enough that you would be able to do some change in your own particular ward if you wanted to.
But I understood your motion to be that these funds were discretionary to the ward councillor, and Councillor Moore is saying that it would have to come before council for approval. So can you clarify that?
Well, what I guess I'm saying is I agree with Councillor Moore that might be a step within that particular policy. So a ward member might want to spend money and come and get, I guess, the blessing of council to go ahead with it. But it wouldn't affect any other ward that money was being spent at that time in that ward, because they would all have the same liberty or the same amount to do the same in their own wards.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Conklin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you to Councillor Cabral. I feel that this already exists. These opportunities are already here for members of council. I think a lot of us have close working relationships with our recreation departments, who are often those who bring those initiatives forward. And I would like to think that if any member of council has an initiative that's going to service their community, that we bring it to our table through IFC or a notice of motion, and we support each other and we work together to bring that to the community. I'm not sure that having an allotted amount of money, if it's still going to be the approval of council, to me, I would love to work with someone on a community garden, and like you said, we need some sort of protocol to ensure what is being grown in that community garden. But I think that it's a supportive council that likes to see good things happen in communities, and I don't see how this is going to encourage members of council, or maybe it would. Maybe that's what we need to have, is a strategic planning session, and as part of that say what the individual community goals are. But I don't know how having a set amount of money in a pot would incentivize members of council to bring initiatives forward.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. I'll be quick. I think Councillor Rebel's suggestion is just to make sure there's money available for the ward councillor to do these things.
So you're talking about just having the money set aside. I guess I'm a little unclear as to.
Well, I guess the idea of this is there might be something come up, could be a community garden, could be some request from your citizens or whatever, that they want to do something that we don't envision now because it hasn't happened. Nobody's necessarily reached out for it. An example might be actually new chairs. If Township wasn't ready to get them, and I think there was an ask there for some chairs, that might be something that the councillor in that area may say, well, I really would like those chairs, so I'm going to spend my particular piece of the pie on those chairs. That's basically what this is for. It's for basically discretionary funds in a specific amount to be used in a particular ward.
Well, I'm hearing different things, like the wording here and what you're saying and what the discussion is don't seem to reconcile. So you're saying each respective ward councillor access discretionary funds for use within their respective wards for special purchases, services, events, and other worthwhile causes which in their own opinion would be meaningful and worthwhile to their communities. That suggests that the decision is with the ward councillor. and that doesn't come back for approval of council.
If you'd like to make an amendment, I mean, what I'm saying is it's going to come from the ward councillor in their opinion. If it's not a good idea,
Okay.
hopefully they're not going to go forward with it based on the community garden and what might be
So
planted
the idea
there.
would come forward as opposed to the final decision.
The idea would come forward to disperse those funds, and hopefully the idea would be that the council would recognize that that particular councillor would like to do that in their ward, and that these are funds that have already been set aside for that particular ward.
Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm just having a hard time understanding the difference what the CRAs do and what the ward councillor will do. And I understand you said about the chairs, but that is the township, so I'm not sure whether I'd want to spend my money on chairs, but anyhow, and it is in the budget. So I'm trying to understand what the difference, what the CRAs would do within their community and what this would do on top of it.
Has nothing to do with the CRAs. It would really depend on what you as a counselor in your particular ward, if there was something there that you thought was worthwhile to move forward with, you'd have $7,500 or $5,000, whatever the case may be, to be able to dip into and present to council what you were going to be dipping into it for, and, you know, get approval to go ahead and do it without having necessarily to go through a whole big rigmarole to do it.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you to CAO Schmidt. Aside from the Springwater swing, is there something like this that already, is there already avenues for council if we came forward with an initiative? I know typically an initiative is attached if we came forward saying, hey, we want dugout covers on our diamonds, or if we wanted a community garden or whichever. There's avenues for funding outside the budget, or is this something we would have to set aside today, or could we just attach it to the applicable reserve?
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you, Deputy Mayor Cogman. So I'm just trying to think, you're probably one of the only avenues you have right now is through the net proceeds from the Mayor's Golf Tournament and how you disperse those funds. But typically what happens is you guys, each member of council or one member of council will come with a suggestion, and to the extent that there are no other funding sources, we typically will look at the net proceeds from the golf tournament. So, for example, we still have approximately just under $14,000 that haven't been allocated out of the net proceeds from 2019's golf tournament. So, in addition to that, we have the community assistance program, which obviously you have to meet certain criteria in order for those funds to be allocated out, but I believe there's approximately $9,200 or so in our community assistance program as well. So, but in addition to that, as I mentioned, there is a council fund within the council budget, approximately $3,000, which gives each member of council, including the deputy mayor, $500 each for discretionary purposes.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Would it be another option then, or an alternative to have that fund increased? Would it be easier to do that? Councillor Cabral, I'm sorry, CAO Schmidt, would it just be easier to do that? Thank you.
CEO?
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Moore's comments, that would probably be the easiest. It already exists, so instead of a $500 allotment or $3,000 overall, if council chose to bump it up to, I don't know, $1,000 each, whatever the case may be, whatever that number is, that would be an avenue, but that would be tax funded, so there would be an increase to the budget that's presented today. But again, subject to council's discussion on that.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
And thank you, and then through you to CEO Schmidt, the existing funds at 500 each, that could still be, council could decide to pool that together and spend it all on one community initiative, and?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
And the source of that is tax funding, it's not the
Correct.
golf tournament? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
that does not, the proceeds from the golf tournament are in addition to those dollars.
Councillor Cabral, are you willing to consider an amendment of your motion?
I'm prepared for that, your Mayor Allen. My intent is to try and have some funding available to each ward councillor for something that crops up that they want to kind of move forward with, but make it a little bit less onerous than having a big debate and a big discussion.
C.O. Schmidt, what is the name of that $300 presently? What is the name of that
Council fund.
council fund? So the motion would read something like, propose to increase the council fund to $1,000 per. Yeah.
So it would be $7,000, or would it be $5,000?
I think it'd be in $5,000. Deputy Mayor Conlon?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you again, just to CEO Schmidt. When was the last time money has been taken out of that fund or initiative? Like, I don't recall when an initiative has come forward and we weren't able to apply proper funding to it. What I'm suggesting is, I think it's great. I would love to see members of council come forward with ways to support their communities, but until there's a need identified for it, I don't see. To me, there's existing money, there's $3,000 there, and moving forward, there'll be $3,000. So if we get through 2020 and turns out we needed more, then we can address it then. But right now, there is money there, so I don't understand why we're increasing it or taxing people if we haven't been using it in the past.
CEO, before I go to Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Deputy Mayor. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, so that's something that we can report back on. But I know in previous years, there has been some members of council, in order to support other neighboring municipalities, have used some of those funds to attend different events that other municipalities are putting on. So some funds have been used. I just don't know the exact number, not from my fingertips, but I can get that number for you.
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mary Ellen. I think an example of this might very well be this projector. If I had been in a position where there was $5,000 available to Ward 1, I would have thought, hey, I'll buy the projector out of that fund and still be able to share it with the rest of township or the other wards. So that's kind of what this is about. It's not necessarily so that you have identified things. It's to enable the ward councillor to do something in order to, for his community or her community, in order to do it without having to, I guess, come and make a big motion and a big presentation and have a debate on every little item that we want to do in our community. That was the intent of it.
Thank you. CEO Schmidt?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to be difficult here, but in that particular example, I would have definitely a challenge with a councillor adding assets to our infrastructure or our inventory without proper approvals.
Right.
So that I would have a concern about, to be honest with you.
Okay, all right, the motion reads now that the council fund be increased to $1,000 per ward, equals total funds of $5,000, to be included for consideration in the final draft of the 220 budget. Hey, no, we have a mover and a seconder. I presume it's still seconded? Yep. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried to move to the next stage. Okay, so we're dismissing now to resume next Monday, right? Thank you.
Thank you.